I pray for strength. I cannot do this alone. Exalted King Damon, please. Also, content warning for sensitive topics, and this review is for commentary, criticism, and entertainment purposes only. If you are affiliated with the author, friend or family, or the author himself and/or are sensitive to triggering topics, then maybe this video isn't for you. Okay, moving on.
Sorry, I'm still mentally preparing myself. I need him with me here today, okay? It's like I'm building a little shrine here. I've never felt more desperate till now. Okay, I can do this. Composed. Okay, composed. I'm walking up against a lake with still water. There's no construction noise going on outside. And I have to open the book in my mental library where I kept Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Grace, and this is the second part of the Germani Books review. I come to you in a state that I've never been in before, in which I have felt both everything and nothing with this book. You know the term nothing burger? I've never felt the term more potently than when I finished this book. So for those of you who are just tuning in, this is the second part in a 3-part series on the Germani books that have been out and are coming out. My previous video was on The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Brigitte Knightley. I thought that was bad. And then today's video is about Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. The next book that will come out in the Germani trilogy or whatever is called Alchemized by Sen Lin Yu. What's bizarre to me is that we are getting the specific names that these fanfictions were based off of. The first Germani book, which is an awfully long name, was based on a fanfiction by the same author called Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Falling in Love. This book here, Rose in Chains, was based off a fanfiction called The Auction. Lastly, Alchemized, I believe, is based on a fanfiction called Manacled. I don't know what Manacled's about, and as far as I know, Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Falling in Love is still up to read. However, I know that Manacled and this one called The Auction are no longer up to read for free on the internet, which I didn't think meant a lot at the time. But now, having read Brigitte Knightley's book and now this one, I have a strong feeling that perhaps the fanfiction wasn't as revamped as I thought for this one. Just a little bit of background, because honestly, I don't know if my plot summary is going to be really long or really short, and that's saying a lot. But basically, a little background is that I've only read one other Julie Soto book, and that was Forget Me Not, which was the Raylo, one of the Raylo books, because she has 2 other books out, and I think she has like another. I don't remember if that other book is also a fan fiction or if it's coming out. I think, did it come out after this or before this? I don't even know. She has like 3 books. 2 of them are Raylo books. I've only read one of them, Forget Me Not. Honestly, Forget Me Not was like fine. There were some parts that I enjoyed, some parts that I were like, I don't really get it. You know, like now that I think about it, flashbacks seem to be a thing for Julie Soto. Basically, the long and the short of Forget Me Not is a wedding planner slash florist AU for Kylo Ren and Rey Skywalker. They have different names. I think her name was Maya and his name was Elliot. Anyway, they look exactly the same, but the characters are completely different because it's a contemporary romance book. And also with that book as well, it was a second chance romance in which there were like POV switching and flashbacks at the same time. So flashbacks are also a thing here, also not done very well. I thought that was fine. There were some parts that I enjoyed, some parts that were like a little bit weird. For some reason, the girl has a thing for the guy's tattoos, but in like a very specific weird way. Also, they have sex in his floral shop and there's dirt everywhere, and I'm just like, ooh girl, you're gonna get an STI from that or something. I don't know. But for the most part, it was completely harmless and fine. This book, though, harmed me irrevocably. I didn't want to put off this video, but like, there's more construction going on inside. I'm so sorry, and I don't want to film in the other room, so please just forgive me for the construction like with the previous video. After I finished the first Hermione book, I was like, okay, refresh, restart, let's give this book a fair shake. Chief, I could not. Of all the patience I could muster, I could not handle this book. Somehow I made it to the end. I think I made it to the end just because I was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender at the same time for the millionth time as I was reading this. And no joke, I was leaving a note on every page. You know what? I'm gonna put it up on the screen. I'm gonna put up a screen recording on the screen because I swear to God, I've never ever felt this way about any other book in which I had a note for every single page. Yeah, like 178. 179, 182, 183, 184. There was just something, guys. Whether it's world building, whether it's character, whether it's the magic system, there was always something. A couple of key mashes there. Page 302, page 303, page 304, page 307, 309, 311. Like, it just keeps going and going. I think towards the end, I think I felt something in my brain crack. And then towards the end, I just like, this happens, this happens, this happens. I think let's just get right into it. I don't want to dilly-dally anymore. Rose in Chains by Julie Soto follows a fantasy world in which two countries have been at war for about 4 years. The main character's name is Bryony. Bryony. Her name is Bryony. I'm gonna try not to say Hermione because that actually has happened. Like, I'm typing out their notes and I think it's Hermione. Anyway, Bryony, Hermione. Chapter 1 opens in media res and she's watching the border shields of her country fall. And her twin brother is presumably dead because her twin brother Rory is supposed to be this prophesized hero that can bring peace to the land after years of war with the neighboring country of Bamard. So chapter 1, I'm trying to get into it. It's in media res. I'm trying to feel the tension. I'm like, okay, I think I can get into this. It's a short chapter. It immediately cuts back to 6 hours earlier that day in which Bryony is like making magic steam from her teacup to make images of Draco Malfoy. I mean, this book's version of Draco Malfoy. It's kind of a bit of a mess, to be honest, this second chapter. She's greeting her brother before they're off to battle. What kind of battle? I don't know. We see their friend named Didion. Didion is done so dirty. All we know about Didion is that he can't get her off. He likes her. She doesn't quite like him the same way. They had a fling a while back. He couldn't get her off. That's it. But Didion still is holding out for her. He's like, hey, can I ask for your favor? Like a knightly thing to like ask for a lady's favor as like good luck in battle. It's also in this chapter that she kind of explains how the magic system works, in which her country of Evermore uses something called mind magic, but the Bamardi people use heart magic. And the main differences between mind magic and heart magic is that mind magic is technically less powerful but more focused and uses up less energy, so the caster doesn't tire out as fast when using mind magic because it's sourced from the mind, whatever that means. But the Bamard people use heart magic, which means they draw their magic from the heart, which creates more powerful magic, but it tires them out faster. So because of this, there's been a culture of using animal familiars as like magic batteries to supplement the energy needed to create spells. But we barely see any of these animal familiars. For some reason, 600 years ago, there was a guy named Da Vinci? And he is the one credited with discovering mind magic, because commonly heart magic was, I guess, the norm. However, this caused some sort of rift for some reason, because I guess people were so hung up about not using familiars that the country that was once one land split up into two, and it was all led under Everson leadership, but I guess the royalty loved mind magic so much that the people who originally practiced heart magic were the ones that seceded. Anyway, of course, what we know this book to be about, heart magicians can also use humans as magic batteries to supplement their energy, and these people are called heart springs. They're just magic slaves. I don't know why we have to dress it up. However, the highest form of shared magic between two people is a consensual sex magic called sacral magic, usually for love matches. I don't know what other kind of love you could achieve sacral magic with, because then I was like thinking, oh, do you have to have sex to do sacral magic? But that's not really explained. I guess you do have to have sex for sacral magic. Whatever. Anyway, chapter 2 is kind of a big mess of like introducing these characters that are gonna die soon. There's also a guy named Sammy. He's kind of important, but doesn't really show up much. I think he's Ron Weasley because he has red hair. Their friend Sammy goes off to war. He's the son of the general. Didion goes off to war. Rory goes off to war. And Bryony's like, yep, we don't need to say goodbye. You'll make it back. He does not. So after the flashback is chapter 3, back to the present. Bryony's castle is now under siege. We don't have a map, so I don't really know like where Rory was fighting in relation to like the castle that she's in. Because she's not at the main castle, because in the beginning of the war, I think towards the beginning of the war, everyone was in, I guess, the capital palace, but then at some point, I guess that palace also fell under siege, so they retreated to the coast. But again, we don't have a map, so I don't know where the borders are in relation to like the palace. Anyway, they can teleport. Whatever. I can't get into too many details. I'm gonna lose it. The shield falls. Bryony's brother's presumably dead. Bryony's like, oh shit, they're gonna come here. Her bodyguard leaves her. Her bodyguard, I don't remember. I think her bodyguard is in love with somebody. I forget. Anyway, her bodyguard leaves her. That bodyguard's dead later. She doesn't matter. Bryony's also with her best friend slash Rory's girlfriend named Cordelia. They attempt to escape. They like try to hide in a closet, I think, but then some maid who's caught up in the siege is almost and they bust out, and they're like doing really cool like they break apart like closet doors to make like stake arrows to like launch at these guys. They're basically Death Eaters because they're the fathers of the kids they went to school with. That will come later. Bryony is doing like really cool magic. This won't come up again later. For some reason, Bryony doesn't remember where the escape routes are, so like this maid luckily knows the escape routes behind a portrait. However, before Bryony can for some reason Bryony's not in the front. Before she can escape with them through the tunnel behind this portrait, the tunnel collapses. The maid and her friend Cordelia on one side and Bryony's on the other side. Uh-oh, what to do, Spaghetti-O. For some reason, after this she tries to escape and fails to escape. Bryony remembers like, hey, I left a bunch of secret letters on my desk with other countries who didn't want to help us but are willing to hide us out as like political asylum seekers or whatever. For some reason, it's after she tries to escape that she remembers, hey, I should probably burn those letters or something. She like goes back up the stairs, her bodyguard's body is there, and she goes back up and hides in a closet in her room. And this is the part that I want to read out to you because it's wild. So she's trying to do mind magic. This girl can do everything, by the way. It's like I have like a bajillion notes that I can't get to, but it's here that I'm like, girl, what can't she do? She was like vanishing walls. She was doing telekinesis with like the wooden stakes to save that maid. She was able to like heighten her own hearing, conjuring fire to burn the letters. Like she can do everything. So I'm like, I don't know what this girl can't do, and it's never properly explained what she can or can't do. Because this is Harry Potter spells with the name scrubbed off. This is the part that I want to read out to you because she is hiding in her closet, basically trying to like conjure an invisibility spell, which requires her basically manipulating other people's minds to like not see her there. So this is at page 22. A spell for blending was treacherously difficult, but she'd mastered it in the past 4 years while her brother went into battle. It took focused mind magic to deceive someone else's eye. She stepped up into the armoire and shoved her clothing aside. She tugged the door shut and closed her eyes, imagining the string of magic behind her forehead. She stretched her fingers, casting, and imagined herself invisible, blending into the colors of the closet. A cursory glance into the armoire would show nothing as long as she could maintain her focus. The bedroom door flew open, banging off the stone wall, and in the crack between the armoire doors, Bryony watched a man run inside and stop in his tracks. Her heart seized, and a gasp broke past her lips, and her blending spell faded away. He seemed taller. His long, pale limbs were thick with muscles under his black shirt and tailored vest, but his waist still tapered into his black trousers in that frustrating way that had pulled her eyes for so many years. She watched him spin in a circle, eyes casting over every part of her bedroom. M dash, every part of her that she never thought he'd see. Anyway, I could keep reading, but like basically it goes on for way too long. And then in the next page, of course, he's looking into the closet, and I guess from the way that the closet is structured and the way she's sitting, she talks about how like, oh, if he just leaned in a little closer, we could be kissing, but he can't see me. I'm like, girl, your house is under siege. From the flashbacks we get later, she should know that they are going to auction her off, capture her and enslave her. I don't know where her priorities are. I immediately was like, oh my god, what did I get myself into? Anyway, of course, Bryony is captured after this, not by Tovin Hurst. Not by Tovin Hurst, but by another guy. Whatever. Anyway, look, okay, I'm gonna insert this here because I don't know where to insert it. Okay, so I was like, Tovin Hurst, that's like the stupidest fucking name ever. But then I was like, oh, is it Hurst as in the funeral car? Because I'm like, duh, that's so edgy. His name means funeral car. And then I didn't realize it until later. I was like, why Hurst? Why does that sound so familiar? And then I was immediately like, you mean Patty Hearst? You mean Patty Hearst, the woman who's famous for getting kidnapped and joining her own kidnappers in their bank robberies? I'm not gonna go into a whole thing about Patty Hearst. It's like, I don't know what to make of her story, honestly. Just go look her up. But like, the fact is that this guy, I don't know if it's on purpose. I don't know what the author was thinking. I don't know, but I'm thinking about that. Tovin Hurst, stupid name. Anyway, after she gets captured, she passes out, of course. Flashback. 8 years ago, they're at Hogwarts. It doesn't matter that they apparently like switch schools every year, because in order to like try and like foster some sense of like peace and coexistence, Eversun kids, for some reason, I don't get it, but like Evermore is the country, but Eversun is the name of the people. Eversun kids and Bomardi kids switch schools every year to try and like foster some sort of camaraderie, which doesn't work here. Even though it's apparently been like 600 years since the war that like separated the two countries, they still hate each other as if the war was yesterday. I don't get it. This is just really badly trying to not be Harry Potter by like Control F delete. Bomard is cold. It's up in the north. There are mountains. Bryony is constantly bullied by the Slytherin kids. I mean the Bomardi kids, particularly the boys. The way that the Bomardi line of succession works is really confusing, but it's basically not a patrilineal monarchy like Evermore is. It's some sort of like mercantile, not even mercantile. It's some sort of oligarchy where there's a ranking list and it's decided based on how much like money and power you have. Except like I don't really know how that's measured, because Tovin is like what, like 8? His father is number 8 on the top 10, but for some reason they keep saying like, oh, Tovin's family is number 8 in the line, but they are technically the most wealthy. So I'm like, why though? I don't really get it. Anyway, they're like trying not to be a like primogenitor patrilineal monarchy, and they always like lord it over the Eversun kids that they're not a patrilineal monarchy. But I'm like, you guys are kind of some sort of weird primogenitor. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but their successors don't have to be blood related to each other. But even still, there's obviously like a favoring of male kids over the female kids. Anyway, I'm gonna go off topic. Basically, so they're in this flashback. Bryony and Rory are 16 years old. She's being bullied by the Bomard kids, including Tovin Hurst, who is like honestly a huge shit in this chapter. We learn here that throughout her life, Bryony and Rory's father has always told Bryony to not outshine her brother, because he's gonna be the king one day. It wouldn't look good for the prince heir apparent to like be overshadowed by his own sister. So she's taken to basically feeding him answers in an inconspicuous way, giving him her magic in ways that she thinks is just like special twin powers. But when she's caught by Tovin during class to be like feeding him answers and giving him her magic, she realizes that this is illegal heart magic, because it's during the class that the Bomardi kids are talking about heart springs. This is where she, I guess, first learns about heart springs, and they've been illegal for some time in Bomard because the heart spring magic can be exploited if you force someone into a heart spring bond and steal their magic, like siphoning it off one way. It's also here that we like try to get some sort of depth into the magic system with like a bunch of like magic gestures, and I'm like, you're trying to talk no jitsu your way out of this, and like none of these gestures matter. Honestly, these magic systems are just the same, except one country drinks water from the well and the other country drinks water from the toilet bowl. You're both getting hydrated. I don't understand the differences. Because if they were talking more about like cultural differences between the two countries that explain their animosity, I don't know what they are. All we know is that Bomardi is cold, Evermore is warm, they hate each other, don't know why. Anyway, there's this girl named Katrina. She'll come back later, but unfortunately Katrina is so underutilized. I mean, granted, she is 16 here, but Bryony is like, Katrina is kind of annoying, and I'm like, Katrina is half Bomardi, and she's telling you all this, and it's here that Katrina implies that what Bryony's been told about history is that 600 years ago, Bomard did not like mind magic, so they split after this guy named Vendetti discovered it. And Katrina's like, is that what they told you? And we never hear from this again. I feel like I'm doing a terrible job at explaining this, but I don't even know what I'm doing. After this Hogwarts flashback, she's back in the present. Bryony's in a cell and she's chained up, and like these chains are like soaked with magic suppressing herb or whatever, so she can't access her mind magic, and she's stuck in a cell with a bunch of women, and none of the women can access their magic either. It's here we learn that Bryony does not have hand-to-hand combat skills for some reason. And I'm thinking like, wait a second, you are a princess, you know how to make yourself invisible, but you don't know how to fight without magic. Because we see in the chapter where she's trying to run away that she can do a lot of like real cool things with her magic, but for some reason nobody ever thought, hey, what if you don't have magic? You better learn how to fight with your hands, because they know about the existence of this like magic suppressing herb already. And I'm thinking like, well, if you guys know the existence of this magic suppressing herb, why didn't you prepare for it to be used against you? Well, no one's thinking like me here. Bryony's here. For some reason, Cordelia's here because Cordelia was like, oh, the tunnel collapsed and I refused to leave you, so that maid left without me. And then she was captured. And I'm like, girl, you can't be this stupid. But what we also find out is that Larissa is here. Now, Larissa is actually a Bomardi girl that they all went to school with, but for some reason, she is in the cell with the Eversun women. And Larissa manages to give them some information that they were somehow teleported back to Bomard in the mountain. I think they're back at the Bomard magic school. Anyway, they're like stuck in a mountain castle and whatever. Several of the women who refuse to back down swear their allegiance to Bryony. Poor Bryony is a little bit like, ooh, no one has ever swore allegiance to me before. And I'm a little bit like, okay, maybe we can unpack that Bryony has been forced to self-sabotage her own potential all her life for the sake of her brother. No, not really. So what happens is that several of the women are taken to do medical examinations, but when they come back, they're able to draw a map of the halls in the dust on the ground. And they also have grapes. For some reason, grapes come back later. I don't know how they got grapes up a mountain. Magic probably, but whatever, stupid. I'm just hung up on the grapes. So of course all the women are like, Bryony, you got to escape so you can rally your brother's troops wherever they are so you can fight back against the Bomard invasion. But Bryony is like, the Rosewood line is dead. Her last name is Rosewood. The Rosewood line is dead. A woman can't take the throne. And I'm like, huh? Because I think it's explained later, but I'll explain now that the thing even with like the Eversun monarchy is, it's like hanging on by a toothpick, I swear to God. Because she explains a little bit later that if, let's say, there is no male heir to the Eversun throne, then there's a cabinet that holds onto the throne or like governs as like regents until, I guess, somehow a male heir is produced and can take the throne. I'm left here wondering, well, the way Bryony explained it, that means it must have happened before. So then why didn't the cabinet just take over completely to make it some sort of like some other type of oligarchy? Also, we don't know who runs the cabinet. We don't know if the cabinet members are elected or if they're some sort of nobles. And if they are some sort of nobles, then that must mean that there must be other dynasties other than the Rosewood dynasty that could take over the throne, can claim the throne instead of the Rosewood dynasty. But we don't get that. Okay, you have some dynasties that have lasted for hundreds of years, like the Joseon dynasty. But even still, it didn't come without lots of conflict. And again, we have like no male heir. We don't know for how long these cabinet members can hold on to power before, let's say, like a woman shows up with her baby and she's like, this is the male heir, and they're all like, what? This is a baby. Like, what does that mean? Like, are they holding on to the throne for this baby until he comes of age? So I'm still left here wondering, like, so this has happened before in history in which there is no male heir, and there's never been like you know, the queen regent like Cersei Lannister or something like that. I just could not conceive of, like, for 600 years, because we don't get a specific mention of when there were no male heirs. Like, was that the end of a previous dynasty? Anyway, by the way, her cousin Phoebe is here. Barely matters. Her cousin Phoebe is here. And we don't get a sense of like a larger family that can take over the Rosewood throne other than Bryony, who is like of the main line. I just, yeah, it's so shaky. Okay, I just don't get it. Also, by the way, Bryony does not realize here that she can conceive the next male heir, which is why she's still important. She's like girl defeatist already, and it's like, girl, you are the princess, you know that, right? As much as your father like made you self-sabotage for the sake of your prophesized hero brother, you are still important, right? Like, you know you're not stupid, right? Girl defeatist. It's so sad. It's really giving me Ru Ying flashbacks. So finally, Bryony and 4 other women, including a young girl, by the way, is taken for their medical examinations. They use this as an opportunity to try to escape, because there are windows in the mountain castle. So the women are like, Bryony, you can escape through a window somehow. I don't know. This girl can do anything. I swear she could probably fly and it'll be fine. So Bryony realizes in the fight that she still has access to her heart magic. So she tries to use the magic to escape. However, the child is apprehended and taken as hostage to force Bryony away from escaping. But the girl is killed right in front of her, and then Bryony tries to find another window. Okay, because I would read it to you, but I kind of don't want to read about, like, it's kind of a gory fight scene. But I was thinking during this time, I was like, okay, the girl is dead. Sucks. But now that the girl is dead, they don't have leverage to keep Bryony in. I didn't get the sense that the window was shut. So yeah, they like look out the window and they see the mountain peaks. And I'm thinking like, well, this girl has access to heart magic. Presumably she can still achieve the same things with heart magic than with mind magic. So could she like soften her landing? Could she self-heal after a fall? Could she like climb down the mountain and like make fire with her heart magic hands? We don't get any of that. Anyway, so after Bryony for some reason leaves that window to try and find another window, another girl gets apprehended and taken as hostage. It's Katrina this time, who I think is Luna Lovegood, but I don't know. And Katrina is like bloodied up and bruised at knife point or wand point or whatever. They don't have wands, but she's at knife point and she's like, Bryony, you have to run. You have to get out of here. And Bryony tries to do this thing called the Heartstop Curse, which I think is just abracadabra, but whatever. She tries to do this thing called the Heartstop Curse, but she's unable to do it for whatever reason. And the guys mock her for it. She surrenders and she's thrown into solitary. So this is the part where we finally meet evil magic Lady Hitler, Voldemort Season 8 Daenerys Lady, also known as Veronica Mallow, evil magic Lady Hitler. If I say Hitler too many times, is that going to demonetize me? Well, I'm not monetized anyway. Evil magic Lady Hitler Voldemort comes into the room and gives her extra strong magic suppressing potion, and she's like, we're gonna have to sterilize you. And I was like, ooh. And Bryony's like crying, and I'm like, oh no. For some reason, Bryony still doesn't piece together that she could conceive the next male heir. Anyway, whatever. So Bryony is taken to like the dungeon hospital room, and 2 Bemard nurses, one of them is like, I don't want to do that, but the other nurse is like, let me do it. And she cuts off one fallopian tube but doesn't cut off the other one, and Bryony knows this, and she knows that the nurse knows that she didn't cut off her other fallopian tube. And I'm over here thinking like, did you know that fallopian tube was named after the Italian anatomist and priest Giuseppe Falloppio? Okay, this is another one of those like small nitpicks that I always get when it comes to word choice, because there are words that are named after certain people. For example, fallopian tube, as I just said, was named after the Italian guy. They talk about champagne later, and like champagne is of course like the sparkling wine that's only made in Champagne region of France. Champagne bothered me less and fallopian bothered me less, but they keep using it and I'm a little bit like, okay, can you stop using it? Because now I'm seeing the seams the seams of the words here. It was less less annoying than Derogatype from the other book, but it was just something that I noticed. And it was just so weirdly specific, like fallopian took me out for a while. Anyway, she still has one tube. She still has one tube, but the horrors don't stop there. From this interaction, Bryony gathers that there must be some sort of like internal Bamard resistance against evil magic Voldemort lady. And when she gets back, her voice has been magicked shut. Her mouth has been magicked shut, but she's able to spell out with grapes back in the cell with the other women that they're not alone. Okay, this doesn't really come back later. What comes back later? Nothing. Nothing comes back later, except for the grapes. The grape comes back later, but not in a meaningful way other than a symbol. Finally, after this horrifying moment, it's another flashback. Guess what? 7.5 years ago, the Everson royal family is like hosting a Evermore Bamard dinner. We're meeting a bunch of people and we're learning a bunch of names. I barely remember any of them. There are a bunch of like Slytherin kids. There's like one kid whose mother is an Everson and she used to know their mother before she died, of course, but she doesn't come back later. And the guy named Finn kind of comes back later, but he's still not much more than a side character, barely. He's like barely active. He like does some things. Anyway, there's like a bunch of names and a bunch of people. We meet evil magic lady Hitler Voldemort. And for some reason, during this state dinner, the Bamardi heir's line of succession gets like first dibs to dance with Bryony during the party. And I was over here wondering like, oh, because we do have two female heirs that we never see. But I was like, if the female heirs ask Bryony for a dance, would she have to say yes? Anyway, whatever. Tovin's a piece of shit. Still being a piece of shit. Like, kind of calling her a slut, but not really. Yeah, like he says right here on page 78, he's supposed to be, I think they're supposed to be the same age. And he says, first dance already taken, he said coyly. My, you don't waste any time, do you? Blah, 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 blah. Talking about his hair and his face and his clothes. Mears is right, you know, Tovin said in a jovial tone, bellied by his look of boredom. Have you decided which son of Bamard you'll be attaching yourself to when you come of age like a leech? She batted her lashes. Well, I'm aiming for you, of course. He smiled brightly. Ah, lovely. You'll make an excellent addition to my line of trophies. I'll hang you on the wall. Trophies, what for? She asked innocently. Couldn't be Elixir's class. It's Potions class. Couldn't be Elixir's class. Didn't Rory take top marks in Elixir's last year? She smiled simperingly at him. Tovin leveled a stare at her. Did he? His tone made it clear that he knew exactly how Rory kept getting top marks. Yeah. So he acts like that. I could read every single moment, but I really couldn't. Can you believe that I bought tabs and then I used them all up? And then he dances with her. Yeah, whatever. I don't really care. Okay, so back in the present, there's like a total of 4 chapters in between the flashbacks of Bryony being stuck in slave dungeons, experiencing all this horrible shit. And I'm just like, what's the point, man? I was sitting there thinking like, this is just misery porn, isn't it? It's all just misery porn. Because like, she's forced to go through sterilization or half sterilization. There's this guy named Raven, but it's spelled funny, Reighven, and I'm thinking, is this Fenrir Greyback? And he's extra gross to her, like forcing her to like bathe and like assaults her before he stopped. Also, there's like this guy, one of the Bamardi boys, one of the Slytherin boys invents like a date rape drug and like points out like one random woman that rejected him back at school. I'm horrified. Obviously, because it's a little bit like incel culture where like, oh, you rejected me back at school, but now I can get back at you, bitch. Like, that poor girl doesn't really come back later because he's like trying to invent this potion, elixir, because like the top level of magic you can get with another person is sacral magic. But the thing with sacral magic is that it has to be a consensual sex love match. But they're like, can we achieve sacral magic by force? So that's what the date drug is for. Anyway, I want to reveal here, I think I want to read this part because we do learn here that it's not just the women who've been captured, but also some of the men. One of the women say on page 92, we saw Sammy and Diddy and they're still alive. Bryony felt something flutter in her chest before it fell back to sleep again. Her prevailing emotion was fatigue. It was hard to rejoice at a mere sighting of a familiar face. Not when the life before them was one of servitude and magical draining, with no way out of this that anyone could could see. They learned that the auction was scheduled for the following evening, but about half of the women still found the energy for hope, including Cordelia. "All right, we have to do something," Cordelia said. "We can try strength in numbers again. There's usually only 2 of them that come in at a time for us, so maybe it's 50 on 2. Then we can find the men, and it's maybe double that." Cordelia glanced at her. "Bryony?" Bryony felt 50 pairs of eyes turn on her. For some reason, Larissa Gaines's gaze was the one she held. Her blonde hair was limp and oily, and she constantly picked at her nails, as if checking a manicure she just received. She stared back at Bryony, lifting a brow. Bryony looked down, and she didn't know if Cordelia's plan was wise or worth trying. She was so tired. Cordelia gaped at her. "Nothing? Just..." She imitated Bryony's shrug with disbelieving eyes. "You're giving up?" Bryony pressed her lips together, still biting back words even without a voice. Cordelia hadn't watched Eden die. Eden was the kid that was killed. Cordelia hadn't had Raven's eyes on her naked body or felt his hand reaching between her legs. Cordelia hadn't looked into Mallow's eyes as she told her it was over. The only purpose they would have in this new world was to make a Bomardi's magic stronger. Bryony would cease to be an Eversun, cease to be a Rosewood, and cease to be human. She was starting to understand that, even if Cordelia wasn't ready. "You can't just give up on us," Cordelia hissed. "You worked for 4 years to keep Evermore safe, to keep faith when battles were lost, ... And now you give up? The prophecy wasn't true, so what?" Her throat swallowed thickly, and her eyes were unforgiving. "Rory's dead," she said, voice cracking. "So what? You're not..." And then Phoebe's there. Phoebe the cousin. And I wondered about that, you know, because it's something that I struggled with when it came to Decades Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang, where the main character, Ru Ying, is also dealing with an invasion of sorts, colonialization by aliens, basically, Roman aliens. And she works with the Roman prince on the basis that there is nothing her people can do because the Romans are just so powerful, so we have to avoid war at all costs, even if it means killing her own people, to avoid inciting an incident that could lead to a war. And I wondered about that because Bryony's case, it's different because she's now like fully imprisoned. Like it's not the same as Ru Ying where, well, actually it's actually quite similar. Ru Ying was given the semblance of a choice. Bryony is not given a choice. And I wondered about that because she knows that the Bamard nurse gave her 1 tube. So she can still have kids, and yet she still doesn't piece together that with her 1 tube, she can still escape and continue the Rosewood line. I would like buy into Bryony's hopelessness if we really had no other options. But I'm over here like, girl, you still have 1 tube left. You can escape and you can still seize some power. Because again, we don't know like we don't know cabinet members. We don't know any other, like there's no ministers, there's no lords, there's no ladies, like we don't know anybody else. And Bryony's sitting here over like there's nothing we can do. And look, what she went through is horrible. I totally understand. I'm still struggling with like, she's supposed to have been a princess her whole life. And even though she has self-sabotaged her own potential, even though she's internalized that she can never take the throne because it's for males only, I still struggle with like, you know, you are still important to your people. And like, of course, she's the type of girl who doesn't know she's beautiful. And all she ever talks about is how she's going to be pawned off for political marriage. But we don't get a sense of how Bryony feels for her people. Like during like the battle, or like just before they were sent to battle, I was like, this doesn't sound like you've been at war for 4 years. They seem fairly confident, even though they've lost their capital. We don't know, have there been villages that were conquered at the border? Are there prisoners of war? What have the Eversum people been experiencing in this war? We don't get any of that. I'm serious. I swear I can't remember any moment in which a normal Eversum person, or Bryony ever thought of one. She doesn't act like a princess. She doesn't know hand-to-hand combat. She doesn't remember her own palace's escape routes. Like, there's so many things that she presumably should know even before the war started as a person of high political royal importance. She doesn't know any of it. She doesn't act like any of it because, guess what? Because she's really just Hermione Granger in Witness Protection Program, and she has to be protected because she's trying to run away from copyright infringement. Bryony's characterization is like, I can't find it. I could go on and on and on, but I have to reveal Larissa's tragic backstory, which is interesting and never explored because earlier during like the state dinner flashback, Bryony says that she envies Bamard women because they're not treated like pawns in a game like she is. as a princess. It is true that a Bemard woman can hold the seat of leadership. However, Bryony's stupid, because I was reading that and I was like, what do you mean these wealthy ass families aren't treating their kids like political pawns? Because of course they are. Because like, if you know anything about rich people, you know that they'll do anything to protect their wealth, and that does include treating their kids like pawns. And yet Bryony's over here like, oh my god, I'm so envious of Bemard women. And this never gets explored deeper later, because then even after Larissa reveals her tragic backstory in which she used to envy Bryony, because Larissa is the daughter of one of the succeeders of the Bemard leadership, but her father said basically like, girl, you are not going to be named my successor, so you might as well find a husband and seduce him right away. Poor Larissa's like, okay dad, I'll seduce Tovin Hurst, and if I don't get his hand in marriage, I'll get pregnant by him. And I'm just like, girl, this is so fucking sad. I honestly just feel so bad for Larissa, because Larissa, she's so unexplored here. She does come back later. She's kind of like slut shamed, not explicitly slut shamed, but she's like explicitly othered by the other women in this cell. Despite all being in the same boat, they still other Larissa because she is Bemardi and because she's like the seductive catty type. But we know that like her backstory is super tragic, and yet she's never given any grace by the narrative. Ugh, whatever. Anyway, before my internal battery goes up again, they test her virginity, of course. There's just so much stuff that goes on that doesn't matter until finally the auction goes up, and this is crazy. So the auction goes up. She sees Sammy and Didion there with her, and Sammy is sent up first to be auctioned off. Larissa manages to concoct a distraction to get the other slaves up and out of their chairs, and Bryony gives it one last college try to escape. She doesn't escape, and she passes out for the entire rest of the auction. So conveniently, she does not know where her friends went or who bought her friends. So she's the last one up because of course she's the special golden princess heartspring. And this is so bizarre to me because, okay, the recurring problem with Bryony as well is that her characterization is constantly assassinated by the narrative's need to have her think of Tovin all the time. We are like 120-ish pages in. We only saw Tovin once outside of flashbacks. Because we don't know how he is in the present, it's bizarre to me that Bryony, being up for auction, is thinking of him because of course Tovin is bidding on her. And of course the guy who's not Fenrir or Greyback is also bidding on her. I just want to read this to you because, again, I want you to picture this girl. This girl is being auctioned, and I want to read this to you on page 116. There was a saying in Evermore, the demon who has shaken your hand is better than the one who hasn't. She didn't know which demon would be better. Raven was interested in possessing her body as well as her magic, but Tovin, ... What had he said all those years ago when he'd asked her to dance? I am accustomed to having the finest thing in the room after all. Could she hope that's all this was? 35,000. Tovin said, crossing his legs again. Getting a bit steep for you? Well, Raven stood and faced the fourth row, hesitating. Steep for me, Tovin laughed. I'm surprised you can count this high. Raven turned to the stage again. 45,000 gold. Bryony swallowed as she listened to the hissing. She looked to Tovin, still and silent. How much of that inheritance did Daddy give you to play with, boy? Raven smirked back at him, and Bryony wondered the same. Orion Hurst, that's Tovin's father, was the richest man in Bemard, and inheritance laws would dictate that Tovin would have access to some of it, ... But was it anywhere near this amount? Mallow shifted, catching Bryony's attention. Her dark eyes were on Tovin, assessing him. Vane cleared his throat and said, oh yeah, I forgot the MC's name is Vane. Vane cleared his throat and said, I hear 45,000. Do I hear 46? Tovin's hand lifted, orange sparks, because that's how they don't have paddles, they have sparks. Harry Potter. I could go all night, Hurst, Raven said, throwing his arms out wide. I've been making my fortune for a while now, and I just made 52,000 off my lots for this evening because Raven is a slave catcher. 43,000, Tovin intoned. Raven laughed and turned back to Vane. 55. 60. Tovin's voice cracked. 61, Raven grinned, yellow, crooked teeth shining at her. She wasn't sure if it was the concussion or the stage lights or the future bearing down on her, but her lungs were begging for air. She'd known this would happen. She'd be leaving with Raven. She'd been mentally preparing for a week. She didn't know if she would would truly be better off with Tove and Hurst, but now, as he hesitated before stating 62, she'd wished he'd never jumped it at all. Now she would always wonder. 65,000, said Raven, chuckling. Vane was white next to her as he waited. I hear 65,000, he said at last. The crowd started twisting, buzzing with whispers. Do I hear 66? She didn't dare look at him, couldn't bear the idea that if she looked, she might see indecision in the way he held his shoulders. Maybe she could guess his thoughts as she did in school when he'd roll his shoulders back and reset his posture before diving back into a problem. 65,000 going once? Or the way he'd stare at the chalkboard in Elixir's class, tilting his head to the side until suddenly grabbing for his pen, jotting his thoughts as if they'd disappear if he wasn't quick. 65,000 going twice. Or in year 3, Prisoner of Azkaban, when suddenly he stopped paying her any attention, not even to aggravate her, when he'd simply shut off and only the strangest of circumstances would get him to fight with her or even just make eye contact. End of part 1. Here's the thing, I actually would like this book more if it wasn't so stupidly horny, because again, her Everson quote, the demon who shook your hand is better than the demon who hasn't. I'm like, okay, so she wants to go with Tovin because she knows him or presumes to know him. That way she can exploit his weaknesses or be able to learn his weaknesses and escape. That does not happen. This first part, I'm going to talk about the first part of this book right here, which is supposed to be the inciting incidents, except it's barely inciting. She's just yoinked right up and sent to auction. This was 11 chapters, including the flashback chapters. Easily it could have been like 3-4 chapters, not including flashbacks. Honestly, I was thinking during this time, like, why do we have these flashback chapters? Because the flashback chapters are actually hindering me a lot in terms of characterization, especially for Tovin. We'll get to that when we get to the end. Everything that I talked about earlier, the fact that she's not a princess, even though she's supposed to be, and like her trauma response, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to understand her trauma response, that she's been traumatized in these dungeons. These women are trying to give her hope, but she's just not receiving it. If like that freeze trauma response were addressed later in the book, then that could have been interesting to explore, that she can rise above freezing, rise above the trauma response, and she does learn to compartmentalize later. For some reason she doesn't know how to compartmentalize because this is supposed to be a magic thing. Anyway, it'll come back later. She's just whatever the plot needs, and what the plot needs is this submissive girl to be sold to Draco Malfoy. We'll move on to part 2. Okay. Jesus Christ. So part 2 opens up with the reveal that Larissa was also bought by Tovin because they both have name brand slave tattoos on their arms. They're portaled away to outside. This was kind of hard to picture. So they were portaled away to outside of the Hurst family manor, obviously. And Larissa is separated from Bryony, and Bryony is forced through the gate into the home. But Bryony sees that Finn, who was the half Everson, half Bemard boy, takes Larissa, forces her to drink a potion, which causes like the slave brand to like bubble up, and he's able to like take the magic brand out and like burn off the slave brand mark off her arm. And I was thinking like, oh yeah, of course we can't have Larissa here mucking up the relationship between Bryony and Tovin, but Finn tells Bryony that the Hurst home is the safest place for her. While they're still outside and it's beginning to rain, Tovin finds Bryony and doesn't tell her anything, obviously. Bryony is running away and she's like up against the property line and she sees like the rest of the grounds or whatever, and Tovin is like, please don't go past the property line because because the tattoo, the brand tattoo, will shock you if you leave the property line without me. And she goes for it, like, I gotta give her balls. She goes for it anyway. She's like, fuck this, I'm out of here. But the tattoo electrocutes her and she like rolls down a hill and passes out. After she wakes up, they're like poking fun at each other again, her and Tovin. But then she's immediately whisked away to evil magic Lady Voldemort's house. And the thing about why evil Lady Voldemort Veronica is so powerful or so scary is that she has apparently bonded with the last known dragon on Earth. And for some reason, people are scared of like how, well, it's so confusing, right? Because like apparently they're like, oh, the dragon gives her mind reading powers. But we know that Bryony can do mind reading powers too because it's a mind magic thing. But the thing is that like evil Lady Voldemort Veronica was like so anti-mind magic, and that's how she rose to power. Oh god. Okay, but the thing, okay, I'm gonna try and keep going because I will always get off topic. Okay, so she's taken to evil Lady Voldemort Veronica's house. Veronica uses like her mind reading on Bryony because she wants the location of Bryony's other cousin named Finola, Phoebe's sister. And Finola is like the captain of the militia. Well, she doesn't really show up outside of flashbacks, but I thought she was super cool and I would rather have liked to have seen her too. But alas, Veronica is like trying to find like any information that Bryony has about where she might be because she still hasn't been captured yet. And she gets like a hint of a location that they talked about, but evil magic Veronica is still like digging around in there and finds out that she used to have feelings for Tovin back in high school. And Bryony knows that evil Lady Voldemort knows that she used to have feelings for Draco Malfoy back in high school. So what Veronica does is that she goes to Tovin and tries to read his mind. And I guess what she sees there is interesting because she's a psychopath, and she tells Tovin like, oh, you better bond with her because this is going to be interesting. And I'm like, get me out of here. This is so bizarre. Like basically part 2 is like nothing at all because like for several days she does like a Bella Swan and was like, day 1 I was tired so I went to bed. Day 2 I screamed and cried. Day 3 I like threw the armchair out the window and it didn't break. And then day 4 she refused to eat. Oh yeah, and there's like something about like, there's something about Tovin's house that's like magical. So it's basically like Beauty and the Beast house where like if you ask the house for something it can give you, it will give it to you. So like they don't have any servants, so the house just does all the cooking for them and the house does the cleaning for them. And somehow it's the house that apparently gives Bryony a list of people who bought her friends. She doesn't do anything with that list. I don't think she even eats it. Does she burn the list? I don't remember. But I was so confused because I was like, okay, because the thing is we learn later that Tovin is able to do some of these things too. So I was thinking like, is it really the house? Is it really Tovin? Why did it have to be the house and not just Tovin? But the reason why part 2 is like a huge nothing burger is because Tovin and Bryony like barely talk to each other. Like outside of like some weird scenes that like don't really matter. They both know that Veronica's mind reading magic is going to implicate them, which is why they don't talk to each other for the huge majority of part 2. And then with part 3 they start talking to each other more openly about things that would implicate them. And then I'm like thinking, does Lady Voldemort's mind reading magic matter or not? Because Bryony does learn mind barriers later, but she's still a newbie at mind barriers, even though they knew that Veronica could mind read even before she was captured. So I was left wondering, like, why for a huge swath of part 2 is she learning how to do mind barriers when she should already have known how to do mind barriers, because they already knew that Veronica had mind reading magic. And apparently the specialty of the Rosewood dynasty is that they're able to do shields and barriers, but like all of Bryony's shields suck. Anyway, I gotta roll back a little bit because I went too far ahead. Okay, so after evil Lady Voldemort's mind reading, they don't talk for several days. Bryony starves herself on purpose to get somebody's attention, so Tovin's mother goes to check in on her, and Tovin's mother like basically takes her on a pseudo tour of the house and takes her to the kitchen to eat. But in the kitchen there's an iPad that's stuck on the news app, which is called The Journal. So basically the Journal is the Daily Prophet, but it's like this, I guess the way that it works is that there's just like a one page that's like stuck to the wall and in everybody's house, and it's like updated magically. And then I was left wondering like, okay, because the thing is that the Journal, I wasn't sure if the Journal was the name of the invention, because they specifically mentioned that like Vindeki, the discoverer of mind magic, is the guy who invented the Journal. And I was left wondering like, okay, is is the journal the name of the institution that gives the news. So like, for example, like the New York Times is the institution and the newspaper is the platform, but is the journal the newsroom or is the journal the platform? And I guess it must have been the platform because Bryony talks about like her own journal back at home, but this journal in the Hearst family house is like full of like Bamard propaganda, like praising their Lady Voldemort. Anyway, so conveniently there's like a magic iPad that like auto refreshes the news in the kitchen, and she discovers that Sammy, Ron Weasley, has escaped, and according to the Bamard newspaper is like tearing shit up in villages. And then there was also something about her cousin Finola, but I couldn't be bothered with details because eventually, like, Tobin's father catches her. So she starves herself for attention again. Starving for attention sounds really bad when I say it, but she starves herself on purpose again. This time it's Tobin that comes to check on her. So here's this girl who's stuck in this house, imprisoned in this house, desperate for information on anything or anyone who could, I guess, hopefully come to get her. Like, she doesn't really think about escaping. I don't really get it, but she's desperate for information and she's starving for attention so she can like get let out of her room. And then guess what Tobin does? Okay, this is like 174. This is what this girl does on her hunger strike. Sounds like someone's hungry, he muttered, picking up a tart and popping it between his lips. She watched his mouth move, his jaw chewing, his tongue swiping out for the sugar on his lips. She glanced away. So what's the plan, Rosewood? He asked, plucking up a honeyed pastry next. Her favorite, the sticky buns with sugar crystals on top. He bit into it and stared at her. Are you waiting for someone to take you to the kitchen again so you can read the journal page? Her eyes lifted from the pastry. She didn't bother looking innocent. He sauntered toward her with all the swagger she remembered from school before he'd become cold and unreadable. Her gaze moved between his chewing jaw and the second half of the pastry in his hand. Are you waiting for someone to forget to lock the door again? He asked slowly, coming to stand in front of her. She had to tilt her head to meet his eye. Well, if you're offering, she said. His lips twitched. He brought the bun up between them and she prepared to watch him finish it, to bite back a pained groan over how hungry she was, but then the sweet pastry was extended to her lips, and her mouth opened before she could stop herself. Bryony's eyes fluttered shut as Tobin softly pushed the bun into her mouth, his thumb tugging on her bottom lip as he pulled away. The sugar burst on her tongue, and her stomach was tight and loose all at the same time. When her eyes opened, she realized she just let Tobin Hearst feed her during her hunger strike. Okay, I guess like during the war she was fed really well and can't hang her hunger. Oh god. So really part 2 is just a bunch of things happening to make sexy imagery, and you'll see later, but basically she's like, I'm gonna keep starving myself and not be your healthy, hearty magic slave unless can I get 5 minutes in the library. And he's like, okay, fine. So she goes to his like huge library, very Beauty and the Beast coded, and she's looking for a book on like mind barriers, which again, I don't understand why she doesn't know this already. And a book, like, of course it's magic, so like the book comes out of the shelf and she picks it up and it's Mind Barriers for Beginners. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that the solution to her problems is mind barriers for dummies? Okay. Whatever. Here's the thing, again, when I mentioned that, like, why is the house doing things when Tobin can do the things? Because I thought it was the house that, like, sensed her need and fulfilled the need by giving her mind magic for dummies. She, like, figures out later, like, he doesn't say it, but she figures out somehow later that Tobin was the one who magicked the book to her. And I was like, damn, every single nugget of her agency is taken away, okay? Because, like, she can't get mind barriers for dummies on her own. Tobin has to get it for her. It's always, and then this happens. So after she gets mind barriers for dummies, which is stupid, okay? Because here's the thing with mind barriers for dummies, which again, she should already know how to use mind barriers as a mind magician, because she still has the collar on and it's suppressing her mind magic. It would be one thing if like the mental barrier is sustained by her magic, and of course now her magic's suppressed, she can't do it, but we learned from her reading the book that mental barriers don't have to be magically sustained because they're really just like mindful meditation yoga exercises. I'm not kidding. The book is like, imagine a lake with still waters, and this is your mental state. You must remain calm so that your mind will not be read. And later she learns, imagine your mind as a bookshelf, and all of your memories are tucked away in the shelves, not to be read by anyone but you. And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, Shavasana was the key to prevent mind reading this whole time. I can't with it. We spend way too much time on this mind barrier nonsense. And then the next stupid horny thing that happens is that she wakes up one night and there's a fox on top of her, in her bed on top of her as she's sleeping, and the fox is growling at her and bites her in the neck. And I'm like, yo, whoa, what's up? What's going on? And then Tovin bursts into the room, shirtless of course, and he's like, Vesper, bad girl, get out of here. And turns out Vesper, the gray fox, is his animal familiar. Tovin says she must be jealous of Bryony because she can tell that you're here to take her place as the magic battery. And I'm like, what do you mean this fox is jealous of this enslaved human girl? Vesper doesn't really matter after this, but I have to read this because this is so bizarre. So Tovin sends Vesper away. Bryony's like bleeding out from her neck. I think they're on the floor because Bryony tried to like get out of the way. So she's on the floor. Tovin has her in his lap. Okay, and this is on page 182. This is so weird. She faded into the blackness again, and when she came out of it, Tovin's mouth was pressed into a tense line. She stared up at his lips, pondering the poison that could drip from them. She felt her neck stitch back together as his fingers twisted through difficult patterns, skimming gently over her skin, pulling the edges of her wound back together. It had been so long since she'd been touched in anything other than force or imprisonment, and she tried to stop her whole body shuddering with pleasure. A sugary thumb brushing over her lip burst across her memory, but she was too weak to place it. Her body draped over his lap, her limbs twisted at odd angles, and her head against his thigh. His torso gleamed in the moonlight. She ached to trace her fingers over his chest to feel the softness of his skin against the firm muscle. She imagined her hand floating up, her fingertips slowly placed over his heart, and the shivers that would follow her movements, the goose flesh she could incite in him, as in their race to the willow tree. What chapter are we on? Did we forget the willow tree? Oh yeah, by the way, there's this whole chapter called, and I remember specifically, there's this whole chapter, chapter 12, in which all they do is race up and down the Hogwarts lake because there's a willow tree that Bryony likes to sit at. And oh my god, Tovin Hurst is being so annoying because that seat under the willow tree is my seat. So the whole of chapter 12 is just these two trying to race each other to the willow tree. And I think it's supposed to be funny and like cute, but I think they're supposed to be like 17. And this just reads to me like they're 13. Chapter 12 doesn't matter. Anyway, back to this. One of his hands moved to cradle her skull, and the firm pressure of his fingers sent a soft sigh cascading from her lips. His other hand reached for hers, where it was trailing over his ribs, and he turned her forearm to work on the bites, dripping blood down to her elbow. Her neck was sticky with dried blood, but she could feel herself growing stronger. She tried memorizing his face, his tight jaw, the pale skin of his collarbones that brushed with color. She lifted her eyes and found him looking down on her. Bryony was vulnerable and only a nightgown. He made no motion to move her, so she still lay across his thighs, with one arm supporting her and the other resting softly over her heart. His gaze traveled over her throat and chest, and she wondered how soaked with blood the cotton was. See, my blood isn't gold, she wanted to say. Because they always call her the Golden Heartspring, because as a royal, they like came up with this rumor that her blood is gold. It seems to be like an important thing, that like maybe her blood actually is important. I don't know, it doesn't come back later. Okay, we're almost done. The cool air over her skin and his attention made her neck. I can't do it. Okay. Give me strength. Okay. Okay. The cool air over her skin and his attention made her nipples. I promise I can get through this. Okay. This is the hardest reading I've ever had to do. Okay. Oh god, I can't. No, I have eyeliner on. I can't let my eyes water again. Okay, I can do this. Okay, be robotic. You can do this. I have tissues this time. The cool air over her skin and his attention made her nipples pebble, but she didn't have the energy to cover herself. She could tell the moment he saw the peaks of her breasts calling for attention under her nightgown. And they talk about how, like, the fox is jealous. And I'm like, okay, this is like nice imagery, like interesting dramatic imagery. Like this girl is in this guy's lap. He's shirtless. She's soaked in blood. They're like gleaming under the moonlight. And I'm like, this girl just got attacked by a fox. I think she's having a hypersexual trauma response. But of course, it's not explained at all. Let's not delve deeper into it all. This girl just has a thing for this guy. And I'm like, why though? I don't understand why. Oh, because it's Hermione Granger and Draco Malfoy. That's why. Ugh. Okay, so after the nipply pebbles incident, she finds Tobin's hidden bedroom and snoops around, finds a hair ribbon, and I'm like, okay, this is the part where she realizes that if she doesn't realize that he likes her, she must realize that he must be obsessed with her, and that's why he bought her. No, she does not realize this. This triggers a flashback chapter, which has nothing to do with the hair ribbon that he has in his shoebox. Because the flashback chapter is like 6.5 years ago, Bryony catches Tobin and Larissa canoodling in the hallway at night and makes a big fuss over it, and that's it. Of course she's like embarrassed and like, oh, blushing or whatever. It doesn't matter. Tobin and Larissa like were boyfriend and girlfriend for like a hot minute. They're not dating now, I guess. It doesn't matter. Usually I'd be like more in depth, but this book is longer. So blah, blah, blah. Tobin leaves for a thing and they're attacked. He comes back. In the meantime, Bryony's like the master of like mindful meditation, and they're at the Hearst Pond / lake or whatever. And he tells Bryony that her cousin is dead, Finola, and I'm like, she better not. I don't know if she's still alive. I actually, like, there was like a woman mentioned later, and I'm like, I don't know if this is Finola or a different lady. Anyway, Finola is dead. I was super pissed, but he reveals that Finola was killed by his father because Finola was using like heart curses on Tobin. There's like these a bunch of like proper noun spells that were mentioned here, and I'm like, what? Which Harry Potter spells were these supposed to be? Anyway, there's like this weird tiff that they have like outside the house. They have this weird tiff. Like, I don't remember what she's talking about, but she's like asking Tobin, like, because Raven was the one who won the auction, but Tobin was able to work out some sort of deal, like backdoor deal with Raven to get Bryony. And so Bryony was like, what did you give Raven to get me? And he's like, it's a private agreement. And she's like, why aren't you using me as a magic sex slave? And I'm like, girl, it's because he likes you or something, maybe? I don't know. And okay, so I'm going to start here on page 205. It's a private agreement, he said softly. I couldn't tell you even if I felt compelled to. She glared at him. Why even buy me if you aren't going to use me as a heartspring? He took a breath and she prepared herself for the range of answers he could give. She thought of the ribbon in his drawer, her bedroom close to his, the way he held her while she bled. She thought of the esteem she brought to the Hearst family, the way Mallow had smiled when Tobin boasted about the money he spent to obtain her. But she thought about the answer she most hoped to hear, even for all her logic. That she was more than a heartspring to him, that she was more than an Eversun princess. His eyes turned to a spot over her shoulder and his lips pressed tightly together. What kind of answer would you prefer, Rosewood? I prefer the truth, but I don't assume I'll get that from you. She grabbed her extra books from the grass and marched past him. She was boiling. She'd made it 10 steps beyond the tree before he spoke. Rosewood, can't it just be the right thing? Spinning back to him, she laughed dryly. The right thing? The right thing would have been stopping the auction altogether. The right thing would have been not going with your father the day the Bomardi school was attacked. Her voice cracked, and she swallowed. She shouldn't have brought up that day. He lifted a brow, and the haughty look he sent her sizzled her nerve endings, firing up her blood. But if I'd fallen on my sword, Rosewood, he said, who would have set you up in a private suite? He prowled forward, his injured arm hanging uselessly across his chest. Her skin was buzzing. Who would allow you privacy and leave your magic untouched? I didn't ask for any of this, Hearst. Certainly not Raven. Her lips curled back as she bared her teeth at him. Is it gratitude you're looking for? You want me to say thank you? It'd be a fucking start. His breath was hot on her face. He glared down at her, his eyes flashing, her fingers itched to hit him, to push him back. She was shaking with it. I won't say thank you for something so selfishly motivated. Clearly, nothing you've done has been for the greater good if you need validation for it. Anyway, she gets so mad that she does a forced fart, and Tobin is like slammed up against the tree. And it's here that she realizes that Tobin actually did give her magic, her mind magic back, but now he's injured against the tree, and she feels so bad. She feels so bad for hurting him when he was already hurt, and she doesn't know what to do because she also doesn't know healing magic. So what Bryony is able to do with poor Tovin, like, her in her arms, is she manages to summon Vesper. What she's able to do is to get Tovin in her jaws and teleport them back into the house, because they're outside the house, remember? And of course Tovin's dad is furious, but again, we don't really know why she's here. We don't know why Tovin's dad is letting her stay here. Tovin's mom is nicer, but Tovin's mom is like kinder to her in her own like distant-ish way, and she's like, yes, it was too soon for him to go out. It's kind of his own fault. And if you hurt him, he probably deserved it, which I'm like, fair. But also Tovin's mom does something unforgivable to Larissa, and I don't know why, but later. And she feels so bad for him, and I'm a little bit like, why? She feels so bad for hurting him, like super mega ultra bad, that she goes to his room one day, and it just so happens to be his birthday. She remembers somehow, and she's like, she goes to his room, and he's in bed, and he's like, wait, Bryony, and she's like, no, let me say this. I'm so sorry for hurting you, yada, yada, yada. And he keeps trying to stop her. He's like, oh, by the way, it's like, I shouldn't have launched my magic at you, blah, 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 blah. And he's finally like, Bryony, there's someone in the room with us. And it's Finn. And he wasn't even trying to hide. He was just sitting there in the back like, hey. And she's like, oh my God, now Finn knows I have my magic. I'm like, girl, how stupid can you be? Because she's in this unfamiliar house. Like, God only knows what's in this house. And she's like so unguarded. Just goes up to Tovin's room. Doesn't see Finn in the room. And she's like, I feel so bad for hurting you with my magic that I shouldn't have. Girl, come on. Of course she wishes Tovin happy birthday. Finn goes to her room later and is like, are you guys really, like, Tovin has been saying you guys are having wild sex, but everything looks fine here. And even makes fun of Bryony for remembering Tovin's birthday. But when Bryony asks Finn about Larissa, he denies everything and is like, she's dead because she defied Lady Voldemort. That's a fucking lie. But we all know that magic Lady Voldemort's like mind reading magic is like preventing any of these characters from having a meaningful conversation with each other. And I was thinking like, oh, wouldn't it have been cool if like they were able to like find the conditions for like Lady Voldemort's mind reading magic, or like if they were able to try and find like this like shared mind space so they can talk in their dreams or something, and Lady Voldemort wouldn't have been able to catch that. There's like so many ways to circumvent this like really annoying thing that's stopping any of these characters from talking to each other for like a vast like portion of this book. I'm like, you can't tell Bryony the truth because Lady Voldemort's gonna catch it. I'm like, okay, so when are we gonna let Bryony know things? Because we only know what Bryony knows, and if Bryony doesn't know anything, then the reader, me, is frustrated for most of it. I'm the one who's tired and broken at this point. Anyway, the next day, the Slytherin boys, the Bemard Nazi youth boys, surprise visit Tovin, and they force Bryony to like stick around, and they jeer at her, and they make nasty comments about her, and they reveal that like Tovin has been like putting off like bringing her out to the party, this weekly party that they have, because he's been saying, oh, she's sick with like pox. And my ears perked up, or my eyes perked up at pox, because the other Hermione book had poxes in it. So I'm like, what is the deal with poxes? Anyway, he's been covering for her, saying she's sick to avoid taking her out to this party. And the way... Tovin's a little stupid too. They're all in the library and he's trying to get her away from the boys. So what he thinks to do is to make her spill whiskey on herself. And then the whiskey is like, of course, like drenching the front of her dress. And so he's like, go clean up. But then of course the boys are like, no, let her stay. She needs to dry off, right? So feel free to strip right here. And of course she ends up stripping down to her bra. For some reason they have bras here. I'm not gonna get into the invention of bras. So she's down to her underwear. What Tovin does again to get her to leave is to like make her drink whiskey, and then he like licks the whiskey off of her. And I'm like, ew, you're doing it in front of these guys. Whatever. She probably, I don't even remember what Bryony thought of this. She probably thought it was hot. Anyway, again, Tovin is like, yeah, I've been covering for you every week, saying that you were sick, because every week there's like a Bemard party and everyone's been bringing their magic sex slaves. But now that the boys have seen you, we have no choice but to like make an appearance at this party because because you're not sick anymore. Quick flashback chapter. 6 years ago, Bryony learns that evil magic Lady Voldemort managed to insert herself as leader of Bemard by somehow becoming successor before assassinating the predecessor. The Bemard government is so weird because, again, the way that Bemard works is not a monarchy, but it's some sort of like weird oligarchy in which there's the seat of Bemard, which is basically like their head honcho, their king, their leader. I don't get it. But anyway, there's the seat and there's like 10 families that are like the top richest families, and they each name a successor. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. Doesn't even matter if it's like their son, their child. It could be anyone that they want, which is how evil Lady Voldemort managed to stick her way up, because what happened was that the first in line named her successor and then abdicated, leaving her to be the first in line, and then she killed the seat, and then she ascended to be the seat, and then she named the guy back to being the first. So somehow the way that the ranking is decided is somehow based on some nebulous statistic of wealth and power, and somehow, despite Orion Hurst being the wealthiest guy, is like number 8 out of 10. And I was thinking like, okay, how is Veronica able to ascend to power, is able to garner this much power? Because unlike real Hitler, I don't know what kind of like Weimar Germany economic tensions she's trying to control people under. Because obviously she's trying to use like Eversons as a scapegoat for something, but they just hate each other. There doesn't seem to be any like ever more oppression on the Bemard people. If anything, it seems to be that the Bemard people are like rich as heck and don't really care. But then I was thinking, okay, if the ranking of succession is based on wealth, then wouldn't have been more interesting if Veronica was able to spin some sort of lie? Or maybe it would be true, because Bryony's king father doesn't seem like that much of a nice guy. But if like Veronica was able to spin some sort of story about how like Evermore is trying to control us because like these families did business with them, and that's how they're able to go up the rankings, because they're making them more wealthy, and if they get the seat of Bemard, then that means we'll just be Evermore's puppet. No, it's just some like nebulous lie about how like ever some people are using mind powers on us, except she's also using mind magic. I don't get it. You know, I don't really think she can get worse than this, because she's just evil and not a girl's girl. Multiple times, Bryony is like, I can't imagine why they treat women so badly, even though there's a lady on the head honcho seat of Bemard. And I'm like, girl, she's just Voldemort. I don't really know how to explain it to you. She's just a psychopath. Because I was left thinking, again, supposedly for 600 years, Everson and Bemard have opposed each other. But like 600 years is a long time. And I imagine at some point, maybe like generations after the Civil War that led to the splitting of the people, they could like foster some more political marriages. We do see that there are some like mixed marriages, and no one seems to understand that like just because you drink from a well and you drink from the toilet bowl, we're both still doing the same magic. I don't get it. I mean, I know what this is really about, which is really just this Harry Potter fanfiction with Control F, Delete, Replace, which is why the world building sucks, because the carved out spots where Harry Potter used to be aren't properly filled back up, which is why we're left with this like extremely shaky, made out of toothpicks magic system and world building. I guess I was hoping for something more after the first Hermione book. Somehow we went worse. So she goes to the party. She's forced to wear a tight dress, of course. Tovin is taking her around, of course. He doesn't seem to like it either, but we don't really connect that he doesn't like it either. Like, Bryony doesn't talk with him, hey, you don't really like these parties either, because he's also forced to go to these parties to like keep up appearances, and we don't really explore Tovin's trauma. Anyway, they get to go to this like exclusive boys club. Bemard does have 2 female heirs that are mentioned once and never seen again. I forgot to mention that the party is at her conquered house, which Tovin does not tell her before they go there. And I had to read this. Okay, so they're at the boys' dinner, page 247. Tovin lifted his glass. To Mistress Mallow, may she reign forevermore. The room chorused, forevermore. And may her enemies, Tovin continued, and he turned his head to give her his profile, be nevermore.
Ew, my god, emos are such wannabe conformists.
Okay, Edgar Allan Poe, we get it. If I had a cigarette, I would light it up like the goth kids from South Park. Anyway, so like way back in the beginning, there was that nameless maid that like escaped through the collapsed tunnel, right? Unfortunately, she's somehow been captured too. And we never know her name, which is bizarre to me. She's just known as the strawberry blonde woman. We never know her name. But anyway, she's also stuck in this boys club as a sex slave. And we see the effects of the date drug, and that poor girl is just a mindless puppet. We learn that Cordelia was used as like a magic battery to the point of like complete and total exhaustion, called husking. Basically, it's like she's at this point, God only knows if she's actually gonna get her magic back, because this could be the point of no return for her magic. So she doesn't see her, and in her anger, Bryony accidentally like causes a glass to break, but Tovin is able to cover for her. But the boys like force the slaves to pick up the glass, and I guess they're under the table because they don't see the girls doing this, but the girls like have this moment where like they're all like kneeling on the floor next to each other, and they all like hold hands, and I'm like, okay, that's great. We have the image of solidarity for these ladies, except this doesn't really lead to anything meaningful after. And I forgot to mention earlier, but like Bryony has this like weirdly bizarre instance where she thinks about how special her circumstances are because Tovin doesn't treat her like a magic sex slave. And I'm like, girl, stop thinking about how nice Tovin treats you. All the rest of these women are going through horrific things, and wow, count yourself lucky that you're not going through the same too. Like, you're the princess. What are you doing? I was just so taken out by that. But anyway, they go to see an arena, and this arena fight is so stupid. So basically what these arena fights are for is that the two Bomardi people are like fighting, but the winner is decided by whoever doesn't drain their magic sex battery the fastest. So like you fight, your heartspring collapses, or you like tap out before your heartspring collapses, because if your heartspring is husked, then the chances that they get their magic back are like probably slim to none. So there goes all the money you spent, I guess. I don't know why they do this, because it doesn't really come back later in any meaningful way other than to say that they do it. I don't know. I just felt like, just tell me that this fight doesn't really matter, but also don't waste my time. It's during the arena fight that this other slave girl, who's sort of like a public slave girl, as in like she's kind of a rent girl or an escort, but she's still a slave. This girl named Alana passes Bryony a grape. Like, she's like, you want a grape, don't you? And Bryony's like, this grape is just like the grapes that I used back in the dungeon cell with the other women when I told them we weren't alone. Oh yeah, and by the way, her cousin Phoebe's here. So she has this grape, and she finally makes eye contact with Phoebe, and Phoebe also eats a grape. And I'm like, okay, maybe something will happen. Viva la revolution with grapes. Maybe something will happen. I was so hopeful. Yeah, no, nothing really happens. Okay. I was thinking like the grape held like a secret message inside, so when Bryony ate it, she could like hold the message in her mouth until she could read it. No. Anyway, so flashback, blah, 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 5 years ago. Now that evil Lady Magic Voldemort has taken power, mind magic is now outlawed for Bemard students, but Bryony catches Tovin doing it for some reason. He's not even doing anything like weird. He's just like writing notes down with his mind, like telekinetically moving his pen to like write down notes. And for some reason, like inexplicably, she has like insomnia or like some sort of like restless legs. So like Bryony constantly gets up to take walks out at night. And I'm thinking like, you guys are royalty. You don't have a bodyguard even when you're at school. Whatever. So since like mind magic is illegal for Bemard students, Bryony like catches him and she's like teasing him, whatever. It's so stupid. Okay, so this is 5 years ago, so they must be like 19 or something. So she's like encouraging him because like she's supposed to be the smart one. And this is page 267. She narrowed her gaze at him. You'll get better at it. It's a shame you can't practice anywhere. I have no idea what you're talking about, Rosewood. His expression was cool. She pressed her lips together and nodded. I see. You know, Tovin, I used to think you were different, but I see you're just the same as the rest of them. He smiled and moved forward. And what is that? Ignorant. Air puffed out of him on a laugh, and she felt it from a foot away. That would be your best insult, wouldn't it? Eversons are enlightened and Bomardi are primitive. Isn't that right, Rosewood? Your words, not mine. Well, our primitive magic has been doing just fine for us. Heart magic has more sheer power than mind magic ever will. Why should we evolve? She felt the full weight of his attention for the first time in a year, and it made her reckless. You tell me, she said. You're the one transcribing nonsense onto a page after hours using your mind. You're mistaken, he said simply. Bryony's volume lifted, a provocation. Oh no, I didn't see Tovin Hurst practicing mind magic, she yelled down the hall, taunting him. She's 19, by the way. Tovin grabbed her, his hand covering her mouth as her back slammed against the stone wall. Once he looked down the hall for signs that anyone had heard her, his hand shifted, his thumb and forefinger holding either side of her jaw. He could choke her with barely a slip of his hand. Her eyes were wide, but his angry face enraged her. Don't speak on things you don't understand, he hissed. I know exactly what I'm talking about. His breath was on her, and she could smell the peppermint of his skin. His fingers tightened, and she gasped. Your brother will be a head on a spike one day, and your body will be dragged through the street once Mallow has her way, he said softly. Bryony's muscles locked in fear. He let his eyes drift down her neck. And such a shame for such a fine body. He was vile, and she hated the thrill of him looking at her again. Looking at her as a woman instead of an Everson. She disgusted herself, so she turned the bile outward. She spat in his face. So I'm just so confused. So he literally talked about how, like, your brother will be beheaded and you will be dragged in the street. And she's like, hates the thrill of him looking at her like a woman instead of an Everson. And I'm like, girl, he is literally talking about that because you're an Everson woman and the princess. Anyway, so she spits on him. He's like, oh, you're forgetting your manners and I'll forget my manners. Do you want a gentleman? And she's like, no. And Cordelia stops that nonsense. I don't get it. Cause like, sure, if Bryony was into that kind of kink, then that could be interesting to explore, but like not literally at the threat of her life and agency and autonomy. I don't get it. I think I'm going a little crazy. Okay, so after the first party, even though it was terrible, Bryony's determined to go back. Not to, pass messages to the fellow ladies, not to come up with an escape plan with them. She's like, they're the only way I can see my friends and get information on anything happening outside of here. I'm like, what are you gonna do other than that? Give me something, girl. She doesn't give me anything. But Tovin is adamant that she does not continue to go, or else she'll be forced to drink the date potion. And he's like, I'll come up with an excuse. I'll just bring a different girl. And she gets weirdly jealous of these different girls. And I'm like, girl, why? She kind of goes on the thought process that like these other girls will have to suffer through what I should be going through. But she sounds weirdly jealous of them too at the same time because they'll be with Tovin. And I'm like, okay, not a girl's girl, but we can work with that. We can't work. I'm not working with that at all, actually. Before they argue anymore, Larissa appears at Tovin's house. Tovin asked her here. Turns out Larissa wants Bryony to teach her mind cloaking, which sounded similar to invisibility, which is kind of like invisibility, except what Larissa wants Bryony to teach her is to manipulate the mind so that she can disguise herself as a different person. And again, I don't know why heart magic can't do this either, because to me it seems like mind magic needs a lot of concentration, and that anything that breaks the concentration will break the spell. And Larissa is a complete beginner at mind magic, and she has to like manipulate like a party full of people. I don't really get it. And also, like, why can't heart magic achieve the same kind of effect through different means? Couldn't like Larissa use heart magic to actually change her appearance physically instead of manipulating other people's minds to glamour herself? Does not get explored at all. But the thing is that Tovin wants Bryony to teach Larissa mental disguises or whatever, because Bryony somehow figures out that he wants Larissa to disguise herself as Bryony to go to these parties with him. And I was like, you cannot be serious. And for once, Bryony and I are on the same page. She's like, you cannot be serious. You cannot have Larissa go as me. Because first off, she's a complete newbie at this. She can't manipulate a full room of people. And also, what is she going to endure while being at Tovin's side? Weirdly jealous once again. But Tovin is adamant because he says Larissa knows. Because unfortunately, she was forced to take the date rape potion while she was in the dungeon. So he's like, Larissa knows what it's like to be roofied, so she'll be able to fake it better than you can. Of course, Bryony is like, absolutely not. Larissa can teach me how to fake it, but you cannot make decisions for me. And he's adamant, and she slaps him on the face, and I'm like, finally, something Bryony can do for herself here. A whole bunch of pages after this is spent teaching Larissa mind magic, which is so confusing because it feels basically the same to me as like the mental barriers thing she was doing earlier. So I don't know why she doesn't know mental barriers, because it seems to be the same application of like mindful yoga meditation. Whatever. Tovin continues to be adamant that like, Bryony, you don't know anything about sex enough to fake it. And Bryony is like, I am inexperienced. She doesn't tell him this. She like lies to him and is like, oh, I've given head loads of times. And he's like, who was with you? Give me names. And she's like, somebody or other. I gave so much head, I don't even know their names. And he's like, no, show me using mind reading who you gave that to. Somehow, for some reason, Bryony lets Tovin mind read her brain, and poor Didion is getting cucked once again, but Tovin is in the memory with her, but she manages to pull a reverse Uno, go into his mind, and turns out he'd been harboring a bajillion sexual fantasies about her, and she still wonders why he won't treat her like a sex slave. But he like tells her all these sexual fantasies like after Larissa's mind magic lesson, and it's supposed to be like some hot sexy scene, and I'm just like, girl, everybody's so stupid, I can't even with this. But Serena treats Larissa like shit. Not really like shit, but I just feel so bad for Larissa that the fact that Serena treats Larissa even slightly lesser than Bryony makes me mad, because obviously Serena knows that Larissa is in her house, and Bryony didn't know that calling Tovin's mom Serena is something that she doesn't really do. Larissa has always called her Mrs. Hurst. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna read it to you, because like, remember that Larissa is trying to practice mind manipulation to like effectively don a disguise. So they're all at dinner together, and Tovin is like on page 310. Larissa is with us only for a week, perhaps a bit longer. She needs to spend some time learning some valuable tools with Miss Rosewood. Ah, Serena said, lifting her wine glass. I presume that is the reason I see a spot appearing and disappearing on Miss Gaines's cheek. Larissa blanched before blushing. It is, Mrs. Hurst. If I remember correctly, you were always well concerned with cosmetology, Serena said. You are in need of further effects for your appearance? Bryony blinked. It was so strange to hear Larissa call her Mrs. Hurst, when Bryony had been permitted to call her Serena. All is necessary, Mother, Tovin said, readjusting his napkin. I promise. Bryony cleared her throat. Thank you for having us to dinner, Mrs. Hurst, Bryony said, lifting her fork. I've told you to call me Serena, Bryony. Bryony paused, her entire body flushing with secondhand embarrassment. Larissa was still a stone next to her. Throughout the rest of the meal, Bryony tried to make easy conversation while Serena ignored Larissa, Tovin ignored Bryony, and Larissa shrank into herself, ignoring everyone. Justice for Larissa! Justice for Larissa! Justice for Larissa. I want to be done so bad. So before the next party, Larissa gives Bryony a tip. Because she used to be Tovin's ex-girlfriend, she gives a tip on like where Tovin likes to be touched. So they go to the next party, and they go again to the exclusive boys club, and for some reason they play cards, literally called poker. Like there's like wild cards and everything, and the wild card is like so on the nose, it's actually really annoying. But I guess the way that their suits are is different, and then the wild card is literally called the Rose and Chain. And I'm like, roll credits, we're done. It does not, the poker thing does not matter. They play cards, and they're betting not money, but they're betting information, military information, like state secrets, or like the location of this enemy or this guy. And I'm left wondering like, who's running the military here? But I guess the thing is that like, they're all sons of the guys who are actually doing stuff, but I don't know what they're gonna do with the information. I don't know how they're gonna like manipulate or like use this information to like garner more power or anything like that. Whatever. It was so annoying, but whatever. Who's running the military? I don't know. But it's at this party that like Bryony is trying to look more fake intimate with Tovin so that they don't draw too much attention to themselves for like how much they're not being master sex slave dynamic or whatever. But she tries to keep the act up, like to kiss him and stuff, but he keeps like rejecting her. And then later in the game, the guy Canning, who is the date drug guy, wagers Cordelia's location because she's no longer at the house of the guy who bought her. And Tovin is like, okay, like trying to act nonchalant, like trying to not be obvious that he wants to gamble for this information. But the card game ends in a draw. Nobody's information gets revealed, but Canning is like, hey, I'll reveal the location anyway if the Golden Princess can give me a kiss. And of course, much to Tovin's anger, Bryony agrees to the kiss, and Cordelia is revealed to be at a different lady's house who's also a successor. She's at someone else's house, and it does not matter. She doesn't go try to find her. She doesn't get any information on the lady. Cordelia is somewhere else, and she kisses him for it. Later, after the club, they're watching the arena fight or something. They're somewhere else now. The strawberry blonde woman, who is never named, is like pretending not to know who Bryony is. Like, wow, I've never met a princess before. And she kisses Bryony on the mouth inexplicably. And Bryony is like, oh, what? But she feels something in her collar, realizes that the strawberry blonde woman has left a note for her. No one thought to do a banana fish and like slip the note through the kiss, but whatever. And Tovin is big mad about all the kissing that Bryony is doing. And it's so crazy. I have to read this to you because I feel like these characters are living in some sort of Delulu world that I'm not a part of, because I'm like, girl, you're in slavery, you're in danger, girl. Like, what are you talking, like, what is Tovin talking about either? So this is page 333. After the kiss from the strawberry blonde woman, Tovin like portals them out of here, and she's like, why did we leave? She demanded, running after him. We weren't finished. I think you had enough fun for one night, he hissed, starting to climb. Her mouth fell open at his retreating back. You're angry that I kissed Canning? You think that was fun for me? He spun back several stairs above her. I'm angry that you made me look weak. She gaped at him. Are you joking? Canning only made that bet because you refused to kiss me. You made us both look like idiots. His jaw snapped shut. Starting to ascend again, he bit out. Kissing is too intimate. I shouldn't laugh. This is serious. Her temper boiled, bubbling over. Storming up after him up the steps, she cried, too intimate? Everyone else was kissing. You've shown me far more intimate things than what we were supposedly doing. So tonight was revenge then, for intruding on your mind. He laughed humorlessly. You're going to go around flirting with as many people as possible to get back at me? You're in slavery!
We were in slavery! Nothing is perfect.
Don't flatter yourself, Bryony snapped. That woman was... She didn't know if she should mention the fact that she'd lied about knowing Bryony. Strange, she finished. But Canning was a calculated move. He had information about Cordelia. Oh yes, he snarled, turning back to her, his face pink. I do wonder what your old friends would have to say about your method of information gathering, Rosewood. She glowered at him. I wouldn't have to kiss your disgusting friends if you would just tell me what the fuck is going on. His nostrils flared, and he wheeled around to storm up the rest of the staircase. I answer every fucking question you ask me, Rosewood. The Waters forbid you offer anything else. The Waters is like their thing, their expletive thing, whatever. She sprinted after him in her heels, like any kind of game plan for these evenings, or having the decency to tell me about your stupid no-kissing rule. She followed him around the corner as he made for his bedroom. You want a rule, Rosewood? He yelled down the hallway, shoving open his bedroom door. Don't throw yourself at my friends. Fuck off, Tovin. And this is where she finds the note that the strawberry blonde... I hate it to call her the strawberry blonde woman. It takes up too much of my limited mouth words. So she finds the piece of paper and it says, no dragon, don't worry. But the way that the worry is spelled makes her think that it has something to do with Rory, because what was established earlier is that her nickname for Rory is Worry, because that's how she used to try to pronounce his name when they were babies, which is kind of cute and like, oh, that's like kind of a clever way to like get a message out to her and signal it to her in this way without having to like come up with like a super complicated code that could be exploited. But yeah, this message doesn't go solved really for until the rest of the book. Even after all these chapters, she still can't figure out what Tovin's deal is. And she's still adamant to like go to these parties, to try and get in contact with her friends and get info. To do what? I don't know what. Not to pass messages, not to come up with an escape plan. She just wants to see her friends to make sure they're alive, I guess. And then I'm like, what are we doing here then? I'd rather go see what Finola is doing if she's alive. alive, what Sammy is doing because he's alive. I think even Didion escapes at some point, maybe not. I want to know what he's up to because he's like the poor cucked friend who like has a crush on this girl and she's too busy being horny for someone else to give him the time of day. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up the second part here because really the rest of it we can just speed through, and also all my batteries are dying once again. Basically, the last part of part 2 is that once again Bryony is trying to get Tovin to keep taking her to these weekly parties, to not have Larissa go as her in disguise. She convinces him to do like dinners every night to practice. Why didn't they do this before? I don't understand. But anyway, it's like one of those things where it's like nothing really matters except just them being together doing stupid shit. Because like she tries to get intimate, he runs away. She tries to get intimate-ish with him on the next dinner because he still attends these dinners, and she like sits in his lap and like they try to practice doing these dinners again. And then the third time, I don't even know what they were doing, but then Mother Serena catches them and they're embarrassed, and that's the end of those dinners. And then finally, the third party, Bryony has a message in her collar using her own childhood nickname, which is not as inconspicuous as Worry. Her childhood nickname was Biney. And I'm like, someone with 2 brain cells to rub together will figure out that Biney is a childhood nickname for Bryony. Anyway, at the third party, the strawberry blonde woman is up for execution. I'm like, what happened off screen to you, girl? The strawberry blonde woman and her brother are both non-magical people. And the way that Bryony talks about them, I don't really know what non-magical people are up to during this time. Muggles. Anyway, they're executed for some vague crime of communicating with the enemy. Bryony is horrified, and I'm horrified that we never learn her name even at the event of her own death. And Tovin is trying to calm her down. Like, imagine a lake with still waters. Now there's a magical string pulling up from your chest up to your chakra, like trying to walk her through the mental barrier. It's not even a mental barrier, it's just like a panic attack diffusion technique, honestly. And then poor Bryony is dissociating as she's trying to compartmentalize this event in her bookshelf mind palace. And Alana, like the public escort slave girl, like somehow manages to like clock that Bryony has a message in her collar and like subtly is like, oh my god, how are you, sweetness, and like gets the message out of her collar. I actually don't know if the message ever made it to its destination. I don't think we even really know who wrote the first. Like Bryony is trying to guess like, oh, who knows the secret nickname? Was it Sammy who wrote this? Was it Cordelia who wrote this somehow? We don't really know, or I guess we kind of guess at the end who might have written it, but she gets her secret message taken, and at home Bryony swears to make them pay for what they did, and Tovin is like, yeah. And I'm like, where was this before? Where are we? We're at page like 316, and only now you're swearing to make your enemies pay for what they've done to you and your people? King Damon would never do this. Alright, so finally I'm gonna try and get as far as I can because all of my batteries are dead once again. The entirety of part 2 could have been squished down to like 2 chapters or something. All of it is just a huge nothing burger. Bryony is having like this hypersexual trauma response and not like complicated feelings about being owned by the guy she once had a crush on, and like trying to reconcile the boy he used to be with the man he is now. And the thing is that Tovin's characterization is also super messed up because he is also like snarky and like aggravating as much as he was when he was a teenager, but then at part 3 we'll get to see is that he's cold and distant. And then I'm thinking, because we know the more recent flashbacks at part 3, and yeah, he is cold and distant in those more recent-ish flashbacks, why isn't he cold and distant throughout these present chapters, as these present chapters are also aligning with like the oldest flashbacks of him being an aggravating teenager? He's also a super aggravating adult who's like angry at the weirdest things and doesn't tell Bryony anything, and I'm left wondering, well, who is Tovin? What does Tovin want? I can imagine what Tovin wants, but then what does Tovin want to do in this like authoritarian xenophobic world in which he can't really be with Bryony in a way that's healthy, or if he does want to, you know, be protective of her in a unhealthy way because of their circumstances, that's something we don't really get to learn, because for the most part of part 2 is that they can't really talk to each other because they both know that Magic Lady Voldemort will mind read their asses. And so I'm left thinking like, why doesn't Bryony know mental barriers ahead of time so that we can circumvent around the mind reading to actually get these characters to do something? We don't. So a whole bunch of my time has been wasted because the only 2 parts out of these 3 parts, the only parts that really have the most like plot weight is part 1 and part 3. So when Larissa showed up, I actually had a smidgen of hope that was quickly dashed, of course, that Larissa could be like the interesting catalyst or something for the plot, for the characters, where we could learn more about her. Bryony can reconcile her own xenophobia against the Bemard people with Larissa, and like she and Larissa can like find some sort of bond together as like these 2 women survivors going through this shit. You know, Larissa kind of just like disappears at some point and we don't really see her again. Like she does manage to achieve enough mind magic competence to like hold her disguise for an hour, but we don't know what Larissa wants now that she's been freed. We don't know where she is. Like presumably she is at Finn's house or whatever, but we don't see her there. We don't hear from her there. She is in disguise as like some other country's daughter. By the way, there are other countries, like other country leaders coming to these parties too. We get like the vague sense that like 1 or 2 of them don't like evil Magic Lady Voldemort. Nothing really of substance comes out of that, other than like we do hear that like a president's daughter is apparently a magic slave, and that's what Larissa disguises herself, that's who Larissa disguises herself as for her practice, but she doesn't do anything with it. She just disappears at some point. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, even if there isn't some developed bond between Bryony and Larissa could still attend these parties as sort of their backup so she can pass on messages and formulate an escape plan or something. No, she falls off. Anyway, nothing exciting happens. Really, the nameless maid's execution should really have been, I think, the midpoint climax in which Bryony rises above her defeatist mindset, rises above her trauma, compartmentalizes it away, and is like, I have to take these people down because look at what they're doing to my people. I can't let myself wallow in self-pity for what happened to me. I have to rise up because I am the princess of these people. I can presumably give birth to the male heir who was in the prophecy or whatever. She doesn't realize this still. She doesn't realize this until the very end, that the prophecy could still come true because she's a woman or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, part 3. Let's just get to part 3. 4 years ago, they're in Bemard Magic School because, again, remember the students all like go to Bemard School and then Everson School. So now they're back at Bemard School 4 years ago from the present. The tensions between the 2 countries have apparently risen to the point where someone is dead. No one knows who is dead. No one knows who killed who. But Bryony's back at school. There's some sort of earthquake, and Bemardy, like parents, like Death Eaters, they come and like start attacking and kidnapping Everson students. And in the chaos, Bryony is separated from her brother and from Cordelia. She runs into Tovin, and this is the part that confuses me to no end, because this is like the flashback that's from 4 years ago. Tovin helps her, and his father, who like portals in, also helps her. Bryony manages to disguise herself as Larissa. Somehow Tovin's father can tell that she's not Larissa and that she's Bryony, and subtly tells Larissa that Rory and Cordelia like left without her. We never heard of this before, because certainly like being left behind by your brother and your best friend during like an invasion would fuck you up. Orion, Tovin's father, also informs, quote-unquote, Larissa that the king of Evermore is dead, Bryony's father is dead, and Tovin suggests to his father that, quote-unquote, Larissa come with them, but he says no, she has to stay here, and gives her, because portals need blood, it's a whole thing, so he gives her the blood to portal out of there. And so when I read that flashback, I was like, Bryony, for this entire book up until this point, like over 300 pages of this book, you can't not have been wondering this much about what Tovin wants to do with you, because he helped you during the invasion of the school and like when all your fellow students were being kidnapped and attacked? I don't understand this, because presumably throughout this entire book, well, granted, there's like one more flashback after this, which throws a wrench into things, but she doesn't really question like the Tovin that helped her versus the Tovin that, well, spoiler alert for later, who presumably killed 4 people to get her. Again, like Tovin's character is all messed up. Bryony's character is all fucked up. I don't get it. Anyway, back in the present. Okay, I have to mentally prepare myself for this. So back in the present, this is after the nameless blonde woman's execution. Bryony tries to thank Tovin for helping her during like her mental breakdown, I guess, witnessing this execution. And he's in the library and he's like, not now, Bryony, I got something else to do. She's like, whatever. That night, Serena wakes Bryony up and is like, girl, get dressed. We gotta do this thing because medical examiners are coming to see you tomorrow and they're going to know that your virginity is still intact. And I'm like, oh no. So she explains that they're going to do a ritual to remove it. I'm like, oh dear God, please stop. I was like, no joke, literally sobbing for like 10 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes straight while I was reading this. Okay, so Orion shows up because this ritual needs a pair of parents, and he asks Tovin, how do you know this will work? Because this is some sort of like ancient other country's magic. Orion is like, how do you know this will work, Tovin? And Tovin's like, we'll figure something else out. And Bryony is wondering like, why aren't you taking my virginity the easy way? And I'm like, well, gee whiz, I don't know why this guy who helped you during an invasion, who is like obsessed with you enough to kill 4 people over, who constantly nags you, constantly aggravates you, showed you his sexual fantasies of you while also not treating you like his sex slave. I wonder why this guy won't take your virginity the easy way. Anyway, so I just gotta read this out to you because it's whack, 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 whack. So she's in, it's kind of weird, but like, I don't know, weird magic. So Orion and Serena are in the bed with her and they start doing this ritual in like another language. And on page 379, there was a sharp pull in her belly, like the worst kind of menstrual cramps. She gasped, jerking. Serena held her down and Orion raised his voice as he continued chanting. It felt like her intestines were fighting to twist in opposing directions. She squirmed, trying to stretch her body into positions that would alleviate the cramping, but there was a wrenching low in her stomach. She groaned and the floor creaked near the windows. A tight pop, as if something inside her had been dislocated. She scrunched her eyes shut in pain, blocking out the darkness. And then a wash of peace. Like sunlight, her stomach relaxed. She opened her eyes, praying that it had worked, and found Orion Hurst's face boring over her in the candlelight. No, not candlelight. A ball the size of her fist hovered over her stomach, just like the spell the nurses cast months ago, burning so white it looked blue. It cast shadows across the pitch black room, sparking warmth in Orion's gray gaze. Serena's fingers threaded through her hair gently as every pair of eyes stared at the ball of energy, symbolizing what hadn't yet been taken from her. She watched the light fluctuate like fairy wings were holding it afloat. This next part's crazy, okay. A glass jar pushed into view, scooping gently under the orb, capturing it and closing a lid over the top. Tovin screwed the lid on, watching the light breathe. His eyes danced with its glow, and his lips parted in wonder. He held the jar in one hand and placed a bundle of branching white flowers over her belly with the other. He cast the virginity detection spell over her. The scan hummed over her head and toes, scanning toward the center. When the magic reached her abdomen, the 4 of them watched with bated breath. The bundle didn't catch fire the way it had when she tested positive for purity. So, Tovin gives her her virginity jar, her purity jar. What the hell? Again, this book is full of interesting images. The ball full of light. above this poor girl's head or stomach or whatever. It's interesting imagery, but the context is just a little crazy. Because here's the thing, I actually don't remember, because back at the auction, I don't remember if it was both the boys and the girls, but I remember at least the girls were dressed in white or black, based on virgin status, of course. I think it would be interesting to explore some sort of like sex-based, virgin-ish based like magic system, because they do mention like once or twice that virgin blood is used for certain magic rituals, except we don't know what those magic rituals are. Again, we don't really know what the Bemard endgame is. Do they want to be like world conquerors? We don't know. We don't know why they want more powerful magic, or is it just like a status thing? I don't really know. But this is some sort of like how to say, like really niche underground ritual that like Tobin had to dig into the archives for. Yeah, so her virginity is just in a glass jar. I don't really know what to make of it other than like cool imagery, bro. And then what else? Not really much else. The medical examiners come the next day. Rain Cole is there. Rain Cole is the guy who basically finagled the line of succession to get Veronica, evil magic lady Voldemort, to power. So he's the first in line, and he's there along with Raven, who's totally not Fenrir Greyback, and he's also there with two other nurses. And they all explain that they're doing this surprise examination because Phoebe, Bryony's cousin, got pregnant, and that they took care of it, and that they're here to check up on Bryony to make sure that like, hey, you're totally not gonna get pregnant too, right? It's so weird because like the first time she goes through this, Bryony had like two female nurses. This time it's it's a female nurse and a male nurse, so it just kind of stood out to me. Oh, so of course the male nurse checks her fallopian tubes. They have like a spell for this, literally, where it's like, oop, this tube is red, which means it's not good. Oh, but this tube is green, that means it's good, so we gotta cut that off, girl. But of course they do the virginity test, and the virginity test reveals nothing, that she's no longer a virgin, wink wink. But they do confirm that she still has a tube, so they're ready to cut off that tube. But Serena is like, not on my watch. She comes in with the steel chair. Fenrir Greyback / Lag Raven, or whatever his name is knocked out, and then she fights the first in line guy named Cole. Tobin and Bryony like hide behind a table and like get one of their nurses, but the male nurse runs away and she chases the male nurse. We don't know his name. Again, this is like a thing where we don't know active side characters' names. So the male nurse is like, I'm an Everson, they have my sister, we're all fucked up. But Bryony is like, okay, look, I can fake your death, I can tell them you died. Can you escape and get a message out to whatever resistance there is? Like, Sammy the general's son is still alive, can you get a message out? And somehow he's like, okay. But the male nurse reveals that Cordelia is at Veronica's house as Veronica's favorite, and that if evil Lady Voldemort finds out that Bryony can still have kids, then she'll kill everyone. And finally, towards the end of the book, this is when Bryony finally realizes that she could conceive the male heir that was foretold in the prophecy, which would lead to Veronica's downfall, which is why Veronica wants her to not have kids. Whatever. This kind of gets like booted to the side immediately. She lets the nurse go and she goes to find Tovin, and she finds that Tovin is weak out in the woods or whatever, and that the magic fox is also out weak, which means Tovin is completely out of magic. Alright, because, okay, so I forgot to say that like there's something about how Bryony is somehow still connected to her. There was like a throwaway thing where like Bryony is connected to her brother through their own like special twin bond or something, and the fact that she'd been giving him magic throughout their years at school, so she can't really properly bond heart spring wise to other people because she's already like kind of twin bonded to her brother. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, whatever. Tovin is weak. Cole knows that Bryony can still have kids, but the male nurse warned her earlier, like, if you can't let this secret go out. So Bryony is like, she still has her magic, by the way. This whole time she's had her almost this whole time she's had her magic. Bryony manages to like crash a tree down, and then this is finally the part where she's able to use like Avada Kedavra Heartstop magic curse on Cole and kills him. And I gotta read this part to you because it infuriated me, okay? Okay, so this doesn't actually come up until after she kills Cole, and then after a whole bunch of other stuff, but this is relevant now, so I'll read it now. It's on page 420. Haha, blaze it. I'll come back to this later, but basically Bryony's all broken up about how she killed someone for the first time. She's like, my heart will never be the same. She whispered, voice reedy. You did what was necessary, he rumbled, words she felt as much as heard. You did what I didn't have the power to do. She let his voice wash over her. She remembered that day in the Tro dungeon, which is the slave dungeon, how she had Raven's heart in her palm for one moment. She could have finished him then and maybe escaped with Katrina. She hadn't had the strength that day, but today was different, and she couldn't help but think having Tovin's life in the balance was the difference. Oh my god, Bryony is so not a princess, I swear to god. Like, I don't care if she's not a girl's girl, but she is so not a princess. She's like, wow, the difference between why I couldn't cast the heart curse when my friend was in danger and why I can cast the heart curse now was because Tovin was there. And you know, not your friend. Your underutilized, underappreciated friend who you call annoying and never gotten to know better. I guess, like, I don't care if she's not a girl's girl, but I do care that for some reason Bryony's characterization is so inclined toward this guy who I don't know why she likes other than he's handsome and he aggravates her. I guess, like, in general, maybe I just do struggle with, like, irritation that leads to a relationship. Just because you're irritated with each other doesn't mean it's sexy. Ugh, whatever. Anyway, so after she kills the guy, she flashback to 1 year ago. I'm gonna try and get through this so fast. It's been 3 years since the attack on the school. Rory has been crowned king. Rory is now like elevated to do other stuff with the generals, and poor Bryony is like cast out despite all that she tries to do to contribute. I thought it was like a siege that took their first like capital castle, but whatever. Now they're retreating to the coastal palace where she was in the beginning. For some reason, Rory's gone off ahead without her, and she's like, what the hell? And they're at this camp, like in the process of moving all these people to the coastal palace. And there's this girl named Delilah. Delilah's for some reason the one that's mentioned. So I'm thinking she's some sort of Harry Potter character that got killed off. But Bryony is like out walking at night one day once again, and she sees this girl named Delilah who's like looking for her family. For some reason her family like left the camp to look for firewood. And I thought Delilah was some sort of trap to lure Bryony out of the camp because the camp has a barrier. I don't know if Delilah was a trap because, of course, inevitably, the Bombard troops or forces are like, whatever, Fenrir Greyback and like Draco Malfoy. I'm gonna stop. I can't stop. Trovin and Fenrir Greyback are there. This is so stupid. She has a shield up to protect her and Delilah, but then guess what? Her shield doesn't work against physical attacks. So that shield doesn't work. Delilah is killed, presumably by Tovin, and then for some reason it's now that Delilah's family is like coming out, like they watch Delilah get killed. The woman who's presumed to be Delilah's mother is horrified, and these 4 people, Delilah's family, are like trying to get Bryony, but they're like acting weird about it, where they're like, you can't just take her, she's coming with us. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, is this some sort of like evermore plot for Bryony too? Like she's some sort of like caught in the middle of this weird thing. Anyway, we don't know what Delilah's family, if they are her family, or what they were trying to do with Bryony, but they're trying to help Bryony, and she's trying to escape the forest and go back to the camp. Somehow Fenrir Greyback, I keep calling him that, his name is Raven or whatever. Somehow Raven gets apprehended like by some unseen thing, and she's running away, but she hears screams in the distance, and then she goes back to find Tovin weakened in the grass once again, and the bodies of Delilah's 4 family members around him. Of course her first thought is like, oh no, Tovin's hurt. And I'm like, girl, he just presumably killed these people, but we didn't see the battle, so we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened exactly. I'd like to think that maybe, oh wow, she was mistaken this whole time and Tovin didn't actually kill these 4 people because we didn't actually see him do it. Whatever, we probably didn't think that far. He probably did kill those 4 people, but he's super weak. She like rushes to comfort him, or like is relieved he's alive, but Bryony thinks that Tovin did kill these 4 people because there's this thing that keeps getting mentioned once in a while, that like Orion has like a dual wielding casting ability. So Bryony thinks that that ability has doubled, and now that Tovin can cast 4 spells at once, and he killed these 4 people at once with the Heartstop curse, but instead of killing him, or I don't know, But she doesn't kill him. She leaves him to die. He didn't die. In the present, the group gathers back at the house. They say Cole is dead. Serena, turns out she's like an advanced mind magician and is like, okay, we have to alter everybody alive, their memories, so that if evil Lady Voldemort mind reads them, she can't know the truth that Bryony is still able to have kids. Again, for some reason, despite Bryony being from the mind magic country, she doesn't know how to alter memories. Maybe that's some sort of, like, out of everything, I would imagine that not knowing how to alter memories is something that she wouldn't know, other than hand-to-hand combat and mind barriers, but whatever. So she lets Serena teach her how to alter memories because something or other, evil magic Lady Voldemort knows that Serena is a mind manipulator and can tell if she was the one who manipulated the memories. So Bryony learns how to manipulate the memories, so evil Veronica won't know that she manipulated the memories because she doesn't know her signature, something like that or other. So they manipulate the memories of Raven, they manipulate the memories of the female nurse, and they come up with a story that Cole was killed because he wanted to take Bryony Hermione for himself. And then this is the part where she's like, wow, I guess I must have been able to cast Heartstop because Tovin was there. And Tovin is like, girl, you just killed someone for the first time. You need to let yourself feel this because you need to, like, because I guess there's some sort of vague after effect on how Heartstop works, because like if you cast Heartstop, your heart will rip in two. Tovin is like, your heart has just been ripped in two. You have to let yourself feel it so that you can be healed again. She has a mental breakdown, of course, like, oh my god, I just killed somebody. And he's like, it was self-defense, you had to do it. For some reason, he gets to spooning her. And I'm like, that's not what you do during a panic attack or whatever. Then they start like making out and shit. And I'm like, girl, what? Whatever. Of course, Mother comes in to knock on the door and interrupts them. This is where Serena reveals to Bryony that she's a seer and she has prophecies. And she reveals that she knew when evil magic lady Veronica Hitler Voldemort was gonna show up. For some reason, she doesn't explain why the family chose to stay with her and like rise up in her ranks instead of like leaving or something. Whatever. Evil magic lady Veronica Hitler Voldemort, Daenerys Targaryen, knows that Serena is a seer, so Serena manages to like protect herself by altering her own memories, kind of, which I guess which in a vague-ish way explains why she treats Larissa like shit, but whatever. So she's like, Bryony, you're so masterful at mind barriers, we can talk more, whatever. And Bryony is like, I'm sorry I kept the fact that I could still bear children. I kept this from you. It was not my intention to put you in danger, but you saved me, so do you think your son is gonna be the father to the presumed prophesied heir that will destroy Veronica one day? And Serena's like, no, I just wanted to give you a choice for your future. I'm like, that's great. That's great and all. I don't know what their end game is. So of course, inevitably, evil magic lady Voldemort Hitler, Daenerys Targaryen season 8 comes to their house and is like, ooh, Cole is dead. What happened? And she reads Bryony's mind. Luckily, Bryony has become so advanced at mind magic when she comes from the mind magic country. She is able to, I guess, like manipulate Veronica's mind reading journey, and she's able to actually tap into her own thoughts, and she realizes multiple things. That one, she's not actually properly bonded with her dragon, and that two, Rory might still be alive because she's searching for something and she doesn't know what she's searching for, but she knows she's looking for him, and so she's like, Rory might still be alive. So she manages to plant a fake memory in Veronica's mind path and is like, maybe he went here. So Veronica is like, okay, great. Like, she doesn't suspect a thing. Some kind of villain she is, and is like, okay, hey Orion, since Rain Cole is dead, do you want to be first in line? And Orion's like, thanks Lady Veronica, but no, I don't want to be a first in line. So for some reason that still doesn't tick Veronica off that Orion might be hiding something from her or whatever. So Bryony is left thinking that, like, okay, it's not just, it might still be Rory to be the prophesied hero. But before Veronica leaves, she's like, hey Tovin, you're still not bonded connected to Bryony, and Tobin is like, well, you know, I actually had to unplug myself from her because she's just so powerful as like a magic battery. Like, I couldn't handle all the energy. And she's like, you're so powerful, huh? Now we better give you more things to do. And I'm like, oh boy. But after Veronica leaves, Bryony is still questioning like the family's motives on why they're keeping her. And we finally get to the very end where like Tobin apologizes to Bryony for like taking advantage of her during her like vulnerable moment. And she's like, why are you apologizing? And it's also here where he reveals that like, oh right, I totally forgot. Wait, go back one. Tobin tells Bryony like, hey, I think we actually have to bond now because she thinks that we did already. But Bryony is like, finally, she has other priorities. Well, except for the fact that she has to like question again what Tobin's motives are. So this is page 436. Tobin says, so nothing like the other night will happen again. He looked meaningfully at her bed. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. It was inappropriate. Inappropriate, she repeated, narrowing her eyes. You were emotionally very raw, he said. It never would have happened if you had been yourself. Bryony felt a sharp sting, as if she'd been slapped. Did he consider it her fault? Did he not remember leaning in first? Is it your habit to tend to emotionally raw women by lying in bed with them? She bit back. His jaw twitched. I'm just here to inform you that nothing of the sort will happen again. And I've been informed. Her tone was acidic. Is there anything else? His exterior cracked. What has crawled up your skirt, Rosewood? He hissed. I said I was sorry. You did? She laughed. I didn't hear it. Yes, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. And why is that? She stepped closer to him, crossing her arms. When plenty other Bomardi are happy to take what they own, what moral superiority does Tobin Hurst have? He gaped at her. Am I hearing you correctly? You're asking why I haven't had my way with you? Yes, she said simply. Why is it that I'm here? Why am I so taken care of at Hurst Hall? I get to keep my virginity and my fertility. My goodness, what hospitality. He pressed his eyes closed and paced away from her. You are ... so infuriating. You know, I was on that stage, Tobin. I was there when you bit on me. I didn't just fall into your lap. You gave Raven something to get me, and I want to know what it is. He spun back to her, advancing on her. You don't get to know, Rosewood. You're not entitled to know these things, contrary to what you believe. Oh, finally, she threw her arms wide. Finally, I'm treated like a second-class citizen in this house. Is that what you want? He said, arching a brow. His voice dropped an octave. Is that what you want? Are you so starved for righteous indignation that you'd like for me to take away your magic and your books and your privacy? I want to know why I have these things, she said. His face was so close to hers she could feel his harsh breath. I want to know the Hurst endgame. Is it because I am the Princess of Evermore? Yeah! His eyes flashed at her, his breath hitched as if the words were ready to tumble out of him, and then he said simply, yes. Bryony watched his face harden. She felt it in her heart, and when he failed to say what she wanted to hear, that she wasn't special, but that she was special to him. Instead, she was a gold-blooded bargaining chip to him and his family. She nodded, swallowing back her emotions. That makes sense, she said weakly. Your family is clearly prepared to play both sides. He said nothing, just watched her. I'll just read to the end because this is the very end. She tilted up her chin, preparing herself to play both sides as well. Are you ready to begin the game against Mallow Tobin? Or are you content to stand on the sidelines while your father does all the work? He narrowed his eyes at her. What does that mean? She licked her lips and then his eyes dropped to her mouth. She pushed back the hope that he would ever kiss her again. This wasn't a love story. It means, she said, that I am more certain every day that my brother is alive. She watched his eyes slowly widen, and I'm wondering if you're going to help me or stand in my way. Wow, we're ready to begin at the very end, huh? We're ready to begin now. What did I just read all these pages for? 441 pages. 441 pages of what? Finally, to begin now. Finally, to begin now, huh? Anyway, the epilogue. Yeah, Rory's alive, whatever. Okay, what's slightly interesting is that the epilogue, my voice is going. Finally, the only thing that's finally interesting is that the epilogue is from the dragon's POV. The dragon does not get a name, but the dragon reveals that Mallow, or Veronica Mallow, is like some demon woman who managed to get some sort of bargain with the dragon that the dragon, I guess, can't back out of. Basically, Veronica offered the dragon, who is presumably the last dragon on Earth, offered the dragon to make a mate for her, because the dragon's a girl, but this woman's a bitch. The dragon doesn't actually like her. But she found this boy at the battlefield 2 months ago and wants to keep him. And of course, a human comes with his human friends. I guess Sammy is there and some other woman. I think this woman may be like one of the other slave women who was in the cell with Bryony, named Felicity, but Felicity doesn't really come back. I don't remember. Anyway, there's like this one other lady with an arm missing, presumably from the slave brand, and Sammy is there and Rory is there. I don't know, I guess he was kept there by the dragon on purpose and not because he was hurt or anything. But finally, I guess the humans, Sammy and the other lady, found Rory finally in this cave or whatever, and Rory is like, dragon, I gotta go find my sister. I don't even know what he's gonna do, but basically it's like, dragon, can you let me go? And the dragon's like, I want to keep you, human boy child, but okay, I'll let you go. It's so weird how like the dragon is so attached to Rory. Excuse me. But she's like, okay, I'll let you go. Come back soon. I have to belong to you. Like, literally, she's like, I have to resist the urge that I belong to this human boy child. And I'm like, not even the dragon can pass the Bechdel test, I guess. But the dragon is desperate for a mate. And Rory's like, you should meet my sister. Maybe she'll figure out how to make a dragon mate for you. I'm like, what? Bryony can do everything except jump out a window. She can make dragons, I guess. My throat hurts so much, but I still have some other things to talk about. So finally done explaining what this plot synopsis of this book. The thing is that I think this is the worst book I've ever read. And I hate to say this because I really don't like going into extremes. I don't really like to mention the author in my reviews, but I've come to the point in my booktube journey where I can say these things because god damn it, it's just, we've just reached this absolute state of the publishing industry with these fan fictions, and it's so weird. Like, what was this book? What is this book other than like the reprinted fan fiction with the Control F delete copyright infringement material? This says a lot to me that the auction presumably was taken off of whatever website it was on, because this says to me that this book really is just the auction without much changes. It says more to me now that The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemies still has the original fan fiction up, because presumably, as much as Brigitte Knightley tried to revamp the material, still left some holes behind. This book has gaping holes. I swear to God that it didn't matter if like the school chapters took place in Bemard or Evermore, because to me it was Hogwarts Castle. To me, it doesn't matter if they call them elixirs, because it's potions, because they went to potions class and they chop up dragonflies this way, or they measure ingredients this way. And to me, it's like, okay, I think Professor Snape is around the corner because this is just potion class with a different name. Like, to me, like the differences between the magic is awful, because really it's just dark magic and not dark magic, like under different names. Veronica Mallow is just some sort of inexplicable Lady Voldemort that is not used as a vehicle to explore why women hurt other women this way. Tovin's friends are just Slytherin boys under different names, and I'm left wondering, oh, who's Crabbe, who's Goyle, who's Zabini Blaze, or whatever his name was. Raven is just some sort of like non-werewolfy Fenrir Greyback, and Orion Hearst is just some sort of like white-haired Lucius Malfoy, and Serena, who's like the trapped yet still kind of helping mother. Narcissa Malfoy is here, everybody. And of course, I will say this again, is that there are some good ideas here, very deep gold nuggety ideas. Because the thing that I'm like mildly interested in with the Draco and leather pants trope is that the fandom sort of recontextualizes the Malfoy family behavior, specifically Draco Malfoy's, to say that like, oh, he must have been abused, that's why he did this, so he's like a tragic hero figure and that's why we can interpret him this way. But it seems to be here, and granted, this is apparently supposed to be a trilogy, which is mind-boggling to me, but apparently here is that this Hearst family is closer to the canon representation of the Malfoy family, in which they weren't abusive, they were just cowards, and they just went with like what they knew, and unfortunately what they knew was like pure blood eugenics with Voldemort or whatever. And that's something that could be interesting to explore here, that Bryony is trapped with these people who want to protect her in some way, sure, but they're cowards. and that's why they don't really rise up against Veronica in any significant way. But then that's not an interesting story to explore if you leave it like that. So what is Bryony going to do? But the problem is Bryony doesn't do anything because she is just Hermione Granger in Witness Protection Program. Hermione Granger isn't a princess. She doesn't act like a princess, but Bryony is supposed to be a princess, but she doesn't act like a princess. I don't know anything about the Eversome people. I don't know anything about her role as an Eversome princess except for the political marriage that she's expected to do. Okay, so what? You're expected to do a political marriage. Okay, what can you do to circumvent that? What can you do to rise above it? There's more to life for a princess than just marriage. Was she stopped by her father? I'm not really sure, because the only thing we know about her father is that her father told her to don't outshine your brother. Okay, so even still, like, let's say she decided to make it her life's mission to be her brother's like number 2 guy. She's read all the books for him. She's done all the homework for him. She told him that he is the prophesized hero. He can do it. But then he goes off to die, and then what's left of her? So that's something that she has to explore as her character arc, except she doesn't explore that as her character arc because her character arc is just, does Tovin Hurst like me or not? Well, he bought me, but I don't know why he doesn't treat me like a sex slave. Okay, well now we're at the end of the book, so I should declare that I think my brother is alive. So, because obviously she's going to be a changed person if she reunites with her brother. But is she still going to be the same character in which she relies on her brother to be that light for her, in which she lets herself be overshadowed by him? And I thought perhaps Tovin was going to be like Antony from To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods, where he would say, girl, you're stifling your own potential, so you should rise up, because he knows from their school days that she was feeding her brother answers, giving her brother magic, and knows that like she let her brother have the top grades in class. And I thought it was going to be like that, but it's not like that, which I feel like is worse. And I feel so bad for Tovin as well, because the flashbacks, honestly, the flashbacks could have been cut out, or like mostly cut out, and nothing would change, because it's so odd to me the way that Tovin was described throughout the book, because presumably throughout Tovin's life, if it were linear, is that he was like an aggravating, irritating school bully until, as the years pass on, he starts to study mind magic, he starts to fall for Bryony maybe a little bit, and as the war, or as like Veronica, Voldemort, Hitler rise up to power in Bromard, he starts becoming colder and distanter, which means presumably in the present he still remains cold and distant. But throughout the first half of the book, in the present timeline, he is the irritating, aggravating school bully who doesn't tell Bryony anything, and then he becomes more cold and distant as the book progresses in the present timeline, and as the flashbacks catch up to him, he's also cold and distant. But the thing is that if his character development were to follow the linear and then was chopped up into these flashbacks, presumably in the first half of the book, we would see Tovin in the present being cold and distant, and then we would see the contrast of him being a school bully in the flashbacks until the flashbacks catch up to the present, and we see how Tovin became cold and distant as the future catches up to him and as he is portrayed in the present. Because alright, basically, before I go on and on about like the characterization, basically Tovin's characterization is just a big mess. Bryony's characterization is just a big mess. It's really just like the author's playground to get these characters to get into situations in which like it makes compelling imagery, horny imagery, but imagery that lacks context, imagery that lacks substance. It's honestly really hollow. And I hate to say it, because like the thing about Brigitte Knightley's book is that it was trying to be funny, and it didn't work for me humor wise, and maybe my style of humor didn't match, but it tried to be funny, and I laughed a little bit at it, and it was funny to recount it back to you. Even Blood of Hercules was trying to be funny, and it was funny to recount it back to you, and this is just not funny to recount, not funny to talk about. Oh my god, my battery keeps falling out now of the outlet. Yeah, Bryony, I don't know what she wants to do. She doesn't want to pass messages. She doesn't want to escape. She doesn't want to try and find other people. Like, other people are just around until they're not. And I don't know what the Hearst family goal is. I don't know if they want to use Bryony to escape Bamard. I don't know if they want to use Bryony to, like, rise up to power. Okay, so all my batteries were dying, and they weren't charging, so I had to shift some stuff around, and that's why this angle is different. I don't want to put off filming some stuff until tomorrow, because I really just want to get this all out there. As I mentioned, this book was not fun. This book is not anything. It's a huge nothing burger. I've never felt the word nothing burger until I read this book. The carved out holes of Harry Potter were just so wide, it was absurd, and it's crazy. Look, okay, before I get into the Harry Potter stuff, of course, I have to bring in my exalted King Damon here. The thing about the Captive Prince series is that I know it's controversial, but I love it so much, and I love it so much that I can't talk about it. There are a lot of flaws with the series, but overall, it's one of my favorite series because even though it fumbles in the beginning, it really locks in at the end of the first book and into the second and continuing on with the third. It doesn't belabor the point that there are dark things happening in the world in front of Damon. And the thing is that Damon and Bryony are actually very similar. They are both enslaved royalty. Bryony is a little different because she was conquered. Damon is different because he was put there by his own people. At the end of the day, what they do with their actions are totally different. Damon acts like a prince because he thinks of his people, strives to find a way out no matter what, and though he acknowledges Laurent's beauty, he does not let himself get horny because his priority is his people and himself. And it's only when he realizes that he and Laurent have similar goals that he decides to work with him, that he decides, hey, I think you need me because I think we have the same goals. But Bryony, I don't know what Bryony wants. The fact of the matter is that this came from fan fiction. This came from Hermione shippers. This isn't anything about Hermione shippers. I'm thinking about like shipping culture in general, where the goal is in fan fiction, and I know from my own experience, is to get these two characters together no matter what kind of like OOC out of character thing that you have to do to get them together. I'm just baffled at how this book came to be. I'm just left wondering why this book, why this story. I'm just left wondering why in general, which is why I have to gaze upon my exalted king's face for any semblance of peace. So yeah, before I belabor the point that this book was just awful to the nth degree, and any potential that it had, I'll say has been squashed by the fact that perhaps it wasn't worked hard enough to make it its own thing. I can't tell you. But I will say this. The thing is that I was so wrapped up in the previous book that I forgot to mention J.K. Rowling. And there has been like talk about this, like, is this appropriate to have reworked Harry Potter fanfiction as like the next big thing? And what I've been thinking about, that I don't think it's appropriate to have reworked Harry Potter fanfiction, especially in the case of when it comes to cis hetero stories, because what J.K. Rowling is aiming to do is to dismantle and devalue and delegitimize trans people, particularly trans women, and using her money to fund anti-trans organizations. Fanfiction has always been a space for queer writers to explore LGBTQ ideas, to explore LGBTQ relationships, and not to say that cis hetero writers don't have a place in it, but is it really a matter of resistance against trans exclusion radical feminists to republish Harry Potter fanfiction? Because at the end of the day, cis hetero people are going to be fine. It's the trans people who are going to get the brunt of J.K. Rowling's turf war against them. And to me, it's less a matter of money and more a matter of dignity or something. I can't quite explain it, but the way that I picture it is this, okay? Walk with me here in my mind palace. Let's say you have a house, and that house is Harry Potter, and it was built by this lady, and she was cool at first, she had wacky ideas, but everybody loved her house and loved to come over her house, until one day she got nasty and started spewing all sorts of anti-trans, transphobia bullshit. So of course, naturally, people are like, okay, I don't want to hang out at your house anymore because it's kind of weird and awful that you are this anti-trans bigot. Also, by the way, one of your pen names is apparently like the guy who invented the homosexual conversion therapy. I don't even know. My friend told me that. This house that used to be great is no longer a great house to hang out at, and everybody knows, and everybody's like, hey girl, hey dude, don't go to this girl's house. She's gone crazy. She'll ask you for money, and she'll use that money to fund anti-trans organizations. So to me, the people who used to play in the sandbox of her backyard, right? It was a great place to hang out in her backyard. Now everybody's a little bit like, let's not play in her sandbox anymore. But to me, having republished Harry Potter fanfiction is like, hey, look, I'm playing in the sandbox, but I'm not really at her house. But everyone's a little bit like, no, you are still playing at her house. Even if like you're playing over the fence, you are right next to her house. This is so weird. Sure, you're not giving her money for it, but the fact that it's there, it's still weird. Like, why are you still playing around her house? Why are you saying, oh, I'm not touching her house, but really you are touching her house. You just scrubbed the name off and replaced it with something else. And then something that didn't occur to me until recently is that like, hey, the people who gave the lady money, or let's just forget the metaphor, the people who give J.K. Rowling money for Harry Potter IP are probably seeing or have already seen or will see all these republished Hermione fan fictions, republished Harry Potter stuff, and are like, well, people still must want to play at her house even though she's a bigot. So we should probably give her money so we can revamp the house so people will want to come back. And that's what the HBO Harry Potter series is about. And everybody who's connected to the Harry Potter series, save those poor children, are criticized by the people around them like, hey, why are you involved with this Harry Potter project? Being involved in this project, like, you're not giving her money, but like this is the project that gives her money to do this anti-trans bullshit. And everyone is like, oh, either like, oh, I'm not really sure what's going on, like Tom Felton that one time, or like that actress who was involved with like another audiobook is like, well, I'm gonna donate my money to pro-trans organizations. It's like, we can't win here. And I'm just like, can we please just move on to something else? But the problem is that nowadays we're all banking on nostalgia, and I want us to stop doing that, please. I know it's like a huge risk nowadays to invest in a new idea, to invest in a new story, but we can't develop anymore unless we move on from it. And I'm stuck reading like bullshit books like these, in which, sure, it was probably a good fan fiction. It was probably a pretty good fan fiction. I don't know. I don't care. And that would be fine because I'm not that type of, I'm not a Hermione shipper, and I don't go to those tags on AO3. I can avoid these tags on AO3. And if I do decide to read it, then it's free and then I can click away if I want. But the fact of the matter is that this is like a presumably adult fantasy book, and it's $30 USD, 40 if you're Canadian, God bless. So I'm just wondering, like, is this worth to spend $30 on, even if I got it from my library? Is this worth to spend 40 Canadian dollars on if you got it at your Canadian library? A while ago, someone at my writing meetup asked, well, like, what is it to you? It's just a bad book, so you can move on from it, right? And true, okay, it is just a bad book. At the end of the day, maybe I'm overreacting, and maybe I'm melodramatic, and maybe I am a little drunk because I drank like 3 glasses of wine. But again, what I mentioned in my last book is that I hope to have a creative writing career one day. God only knows if this booktube thing is going to help me or hinder me. I'm too deep in it now. But I'm hoping to have a creative career one day. I don't want to revamp my fanfics, but if revamping fanfics is what publishers want to pick up, is it going to be a feasible type of industry for me? Is this a type of industry that I can put my own work out there and be accepted? I don't know. And especially for me as like a queer person, as a person who wants to write queer characters, is this type of book like indicative for me to put my work out there? I don't know. And my battery's dying again. I don't know what I'm gonna do except I guess wait around for the next one. I do have a couple other wild books, more fan fiction books if you can believe it, but I need to take a break for now. Who knows when I'll see you next. Please leave a like if you want to help me regain some sanity, and I'll probably see you in October for Alchemize because I'm already too deep in this shit now to back out. But please, please, please hold your friends close and hold your fandom friends closer and kiss them goodnight, and please leave a comment if you've read Hermione fanfics and how do you feel about this one. Any other books you'd like to talk about or recommend. If you like Captive Prince, please leave a like, leave a comment. I wish I could end this on a more fun note, but honestly, I'm just exhausted and my voice is giving out. I'll see you in whenever the next one. Bye.